Jane Velez-Mitchell reporting with team coverage of the open rescue trial of Wayne Hsiung that is going on right now in Sonoma County, California. We are at a crucial moment of the case. Right now, Wayne Hsiung is inside the court giving his closing argument to the jury. So what will they decide? Will they send him to prison for being involved in the open rescue of approximately 70 ducks and chickens? Will they send this man, a constitutional law professor, is what he used to be, currently a lawyer, defending himself, considered the leader of the open animal rescue movement? Will they send him to prison for helping to rescue these suffering animals? That's what we're talking about right now. We have an incredible team, and I just want to get started with Nathan Semmel. My understanding is that the judge, who's done some very strange things throughout this trial, gave the instructions to the jury before the closing arguments. That seems bizarre to me, along with many other bizarre rulings that she's made. What do you make of it?
I mean, I practice in New York. I've never seen a trial here where the jury instructions aren't the last thing before the jury goes and deliberates. That trial is in California. I don't know how they do it out in California. I will say that there is nothing, I don't think, on earth more boring than listening to a jury instruction. Usually takes a good hour. It's weedsy. It's tough to follow. I would not want to be the person giving my summation right after a jury instruction is read. But in California, the prosecution goes first. In New York, the defense goes first. So perhaps advantage Wayne, we'll see.
You're absolutely right, because the way it's played out today, and we have people in the courtroom. Remember, we would love to have had cameras in the courtroom to hear all sides of this story. But not only are there no cameras in this courtroom, there's no video, there is no still photos. And you may have heard me say this before, but even the court sketch artist has been prevented from sketching anybody. The judge, prosecutors, witnesses, the court staff, jurors, bailiffs, observers in the gallery. Only Wayne Hsiung can she sketch. So this is a very strange trial, and it's hard to believe this is happening in California. There is the judge, Judge Laura Pasaglia, who is a former prosecutor herself, and may very well, I would bet, knows the prosecution in this case. And the prosecution has been quoted as saying they want to cut the head off the snake of this open rescue movement. She has gagged the defendant, Wayne Hsiung, who, by the way, is defending himself, again, a former constitutional law professor. And she's just made it almost impossible, really, for Wayne to put on an effective defense, which he is doing right now in his closing argument. So Wayne Hsiung, last night, before this day, where the jury might decide, because they're going to get this case any minute now, he videotaped sort of a goodbye. Certainly he hopes it's not a goodbye, but he videotaped this very emotional goodbye. Let's listen to it and speak on the other side.
So in 12 hours, the case is going to go to the jury after closing argument, and I've just been hanging out with this little guy because it could be years until I see him again. He's been acting really weird and nervous. I think he can tell something's about to change, or something could change very dramatically. Now, he's 7 years old. We rescued him from a dog meat farm in 2016. So if I get near the maximum sentence, this could be the last time seeing him. So we're getting ready for that possibility. It's been a tough year for both of us because, I know, buddy. Our big family has become just the two of us. We had Lisa and Natalie and Flash and Joan. It's okay, Ollie. It's okay. And my mom, and we lost them all. It's going to be very sad if it's just him. But the good thing is he's got a co-parent, Priya, that he's ready to go to. She loves him very much, and no matter what happens to me, he's going to be in good shape. And I feel the same way about the animal rights movement too. There's this concept called losing forward, that movements need to learn. And the concept of losing forward is that no matter what happens to any one of us, or really even to the movement as a whole, as long as we learn lessons from even our supposed defeats, the movement grows stronger over time. And
that is so emotional. I want to go straight out to Ellen Dent of Animal Alliance Network. My God.
Yeah, it just breaks my heart seeing him there with his companion who won't be able to visit him, if the worst happens as far as the judgment. But, we're holding on to hope. We're going to stay positive. We're going to put that positive energy out there that this jury, they're going to see through all of this mistreatment that Wayne has endured during this whole trial. I mean, it's just so obvious from the way that the judges behave, the stenographer. I mean, I've never heard of anything like this before, that they aren't letting someone even sketch in there in the courtroom other than just pictures of him or drawings of him. Let's all stay hopeful. How is he the only person who's still on trial here? Like, they need to ask themselves that question. Like, he is being targeted, and that's not okay. What justice is there in targeting one person out of all of these other activists who also had charges against them and were able to walk out freely?
Donny Moss, this was a very emotional video that he recorded, and the courage that he is showing, the grace and the dignity when he could literally be hauled off to prison right today as soon as the verdict comes in.
Yeah, we've seen this goodbye video before, because this is at least the third trial where Wayne has been brought up on criminal charges associated with open rescue. And each time we've been pleasantly surprised that he has been acquitted. And of course, that's the hope today. Even if he is convicted, and we have to acknowledge there are benefits to a conviction here, because then he can appeal and there could be more media attention around open rescue. So there are benefits here of a conviction. What is the likelihood that he'll really be locked up for a long period of time? If he's convicted and charged and get to receive a jail sentence, it's going to be short, and he's going to get home to his companion.
I don't know, because the reason I say that is I've never seen a trial like this, and I've covered some big ones. I covered the Michael Jackson trial in Santa Maria, California. I covered the Casey Anthony trial. I covered the Jodi Arias trial and the Robert Blake trial and the Phil Spector trial. I've covered a lot of these trials. I have never seen a trial like this. This, to me, doesn't seem like America. I don't feel, Lindsey Baker, like this is happening in the United States of America, where you can't even sketch the judge, where the judge came and literally ripped the sketch that this woman was taking out of her hands and took it away.
I mean, we've gone over this. It's so incredibly unbelievable. And the fact that so much of, Wayne will be giving up so much for something that is a crime he didn't do. He's being punished because animal agriculture companies are not following the rules, and they're doing horrific things to animals. And as a result of that, by bringing that to the public's attention, he may ultimately pay the price. I hope he doesn't. I feel that information has definitely been suppressed. I feel like it's been very one-sided. I hope the jury sees this. That's my prayer. But I agree that even if the worst happens, it depends on what we do now and afterwards to get this out in front of the public and to continue to protest and to continue with the fight and to continue to support Wayne if he does have to go to a retrial.
You are looking at drone footage of one of these actions. There were two actions, mass open rescues is what they're called, of animals that occurred in 2018, 2019. This has taken 5 years to get to this point where we are about to go on verdict watch, where closing arguments, the final closing arguments, are happening right this second. Wayne just finishing up his talk to the jury. and he has been gagged from talking to the media, but he has sat in his car every night and talked about some of the things that have been going on in this trial, the outrages. I wonder, where is the ACLU? Where is mainstream media covering this, if not from an animal rights perspective, from a free speech perspective? Because what has been happening in this courtroom to me is absolutely bizarre. Let's check this one out.
They evacuated the courtroom yesterday because someone mentioned a slaughterhouse. Louis Bernier is an animal cruelty investigator who's testifying about a demonstration at a slaughterhouse. The prosecution had demanded edits to video of what happened on that day, cutting out everything that was actually happening to animals, all the violence. And Louis just commented offhand, "It's sad that people can't see this." In response, the prosecution immediately stood up and objected. The courtroom was cleared, and the attorney for the prosecution indicated that Louis needed to be excluded from the courtroom entirely. He wasn't even able to talk about what he saw. This is an example of how the system suppresses accurate information about slaughterhouses and factory farms to prevent people like you from finding out the truth. And this is why we need change.
I mean, that is outrageous. I want to go to Nathan Semmel. Nathan, you are a former assistant district attorney from Manhattan and currently a very successful defense attorney. Have you ever heard of something like this? The courtroom being cleared. I have no words for this.
Yeah, Jen, you would think that this was a mafia case, right? Or a international terrorism case. You mentioned a whole bunch of famous high-profile cases. I bet you there wasn't a gag order in a single one of them. Media excluded from the courtroom, sketch artists not allowed to sketch, people not allowed to take notes. It's really unheard of. It's a shame, but here we are. And, you know, Wayne is doing the best that he can with what he has. That's the job of the defense attorney. Sometimes we are hamstrung a little bit by the judge or by the evidence, and you do the best that you can with what you have. What we have going for us is the fact that some of these methods have been tried and failed by the prosecution in the past. They have tried to keep the jury from being in the know, and it's backfired. And I think that often happens with juries. They don't want to be treated like children. And when a witness makes a statement like this witness did, and the prosecutor jumps up, he telegraphs for the jury, "I don't want you to see this. There's something you can't see this." And juries don't like that, and you know, that's proven to backfire in the several trials that we've witnessed lately. And I wouldn't surprise me if that were to happen again. A jury who's making a decision on somebody's future, on their liberty perhaps, wants a complete picture. And we got to remember, the prosecution has the burden of proof. They have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think the absence of a complete narrative of the full picture, I think in and of itself could be reasonable doubt.
Well, I just have never seen anything like it in all the years that I've covered a lot of trials. Now, this is a free speech case, and I wonder, where is the ACLU? That's what I'd like to know. Here's another comment that Wayne Hsiung made inside his car that I think really raises some very significant free speech issues.
Hundreds of activists walked into factory farms and slaughterhouses, gave aid to animals, even locked their necks to the slaughter line to prevent animals from drowning in scalding water. But I personally did not touch a single animal. I personally did not touch a single part of the slaughterhouse machinery. Instead, I'm being charged for conspiring with others who allegedly did. But all the prosecution's evidence involves speech. They've asked questions of our witnesses, such as, are you vegan? Are you Wayne Hsiung's friend? Have you organized vigils with Wayne Hsiung? But all those things aren't crimes. There are multiple cases in California recently, including a case called People versus Hsiung, and another case called People versus Ware, holding that if you do not know that what you're doing is a crime, so for example, if you're live streaming and engaging in First Amendment activity, and if your involvement in a crime is just cheerleading, for example, giving a speech or holding a vigil, you can't be liable for a felony conspiracy. So we'll be testing in court tomorrow. It's not just animal rights, but free speech.
So I want to go to Michelle Celestino. You and I worked together at KCAL News many years ago. You've worked at other major news outlets. As a journalist, what is your reaction to this stifling of free speech?
I think it's egregious and completely unfair. Where is the major media? If they were covering this, I don't think they'd be able to get away with all of these violations of his civil rights. I spoke with another good friend of ours, and I was describing what was happening in the case last night specifically. And she asked me, is this some kind of mob or murder trial? I'm like, no, it's not. And I can't believe how completely unfair and biased the judge is. And I wanted to bring a point. I was reading the Twitter, and part of the judge's instructions, she talked about how I think she was saying, don't pay attention to or consider what I said, just what you think of the defendant. And I think she was backpedaling because she has been extremely biased and has been helping the prosecution, and it's been obvious. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm hoping that Wayne comes through with this, but it's been completely unfair.
Yeah, and you make a very good point. For example, the judge at one point, when the prosecution failed to make an objection, the judge made the objection and the ruling, and then said, do you want to object? Like, in other words, hey, you're asleep at the wheel. You should have objected to that if you wanted. I mean, she, and again, she's a former prosecutor. So I just wonder why the mainstream media, the ACLU, other institutions that care about free speech, even if they don't care about animal rights, Donny Moss, are not all over this. This is America. If this can happen in an animal rights trial, it can happen regarding other social justice movements.
I mean, first of all, we're not sure. We don't know the extent to which the ACLU and other free speech groups are aware of this particular trial. And if they are aware, you know, where do they pick their battles? So it would be interesting when all of this is said and done to bring this trial to them and see what they think and see if they're, you know, if the breach is as bad as we think it is. I'd also like to observe what we were addressing earlier about the prosecution jumping up when one of the witnesses started to talk about what he saw inside of a slaughterhouse. You know, I'm just mesmerized by the fact that this prosecutor isn't learning the mistakes made by previous prosecutors. How is it possible that this guy didn't let the defendant speak and then in his closing argument say, listen, jury, you might have seen information or you might have heard information that's unsettling, but that doesn't change the fact that, you know, the defendant did X, Y, or Z. It's just that they haven't learned from their mistakes. And that's wonderful for, you know, for the defendant and for our side.
Yes. And what you're referring to is the fact that Wayne Hsiung has and his team have gotten acquittals in other cases. He was put on trial in Utah and he was acquitted. And he also defended former Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul and Alicia Santorio in another California open rescue case. There is the alleged crime caught on tape, which is ironic because it's actually the people who are doing the rescues that videotape and then distribute the videotape of them doing rescues, which is the only reason the prosecution even knows that this rescue occurred. So the idea, we're in an upside down world. Generally, prosecutors are thrilled when they can catch the crime on tape and they're like, wow, this is golden evidence. But in this case, in all of these cases, they have tried to suppress the video of the crimes because they know that the video of the crimes will actually show the conditions of the animals. In that case, Alexandra Paul and Alicia Santorio, they were both acquitted. And here's Alexandra Paul testifying in her own defense on the witness stand prior to being acquitted.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors. And we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
So that's the other part of this, is that those who went into these animal factories 5 years ago in Sonoma County, California, they had investigated previously. They had gone in there to document the conditions inside these facilities, and they handed that videotape. and I'm going to show you some of their investigation videotape. Here it is. Here's the duck farm. This is courtesy of Direct Action Everywhere. This is some of the footage they've videotaped in an investigation prior to doing the open rescue. They went to the authorities with this tape, and you can see the wound on the side of this animal. And they said, look, these are, in our opinion, criminal violations. We want you to investigate. And there were no investigations that occurred. And then those are dead ducks in a pile. Instead of investigating what's going on, they turn around and arrest the people who brought them the evidence. And this is, really an upside down world. The people of California have spoken loud and clear in 2 propositions now, Proposition 2 and Proposition 12, saying they care about the conditions of animals and they care about what's happening. Now, you saw that footage. I'm going to show you a little more footage. Here we go. This is the chicken facility. This is the Direct Action Everywhere undercover investigation prior to the open rescue. And so this is footage the jury has not gotten to see. The jury has to make its decision without seeing the full scope of the conditions inside these facilities. They are not allowed to see this. And in fact, the judge had initially said that 0 footage of the conditions inside these facilities would be shown. I'm going to show you right now the 2 clips that is my understanding is all they've been allowed to see. And I would like, Nathan, for you as a former assistant district attorney in Manhattan and a current defense attorney to tell me, to contrast what you just saw, which was the investigation. Here's the short clips the jury saw. 1 chicken. Take it away.
That's a completely sanitized version of what we saw, and more than what we saw, really of the truth. If you're a novice, even with witness testimony, you're really not going to know necessarily what you're seeing here. And if this is, and even if you know or believe the witnesses that chicken is suffering, most of these jurors, if not all of them, are probably not vegan or vegetarian. And, I think they are probably okay to some extent in their minds with some distasteful things, happening at a factory. But if you show the reality of it, nobody is okay with what happens at these factories. Nobody is. And we've seen that in the prior trials. And I think that the reason for why we're only seeing a trespass charge in this case and not the burglary charges or the grand larceny charges that we've seen before is because those charges really open the door to the conditions of the farm. And I think what the prosecutors tried to do here was present the most sanitized version of what happens possible and tried to simplify the charge as much as possible to get Wayne out of the picture.
And, we were talking about where is all the mainstream media, which is one of the reasons why I started Unchained TV, which is a nonprofit streaming network that brings out these stories for animal rights. I was a crime reporter and covered many trials for years. Well, we're covering what some might call the crime of the century. And I'm not talking about Wayne Hsiung. I'm talking about what's happening. And Michelle Renee Sitaro has put up this list. Where is everybody? Where is the New York Times, ABC News, MSNBC, CBS News? This is a very important story for a lot of reasons because animal agriculture has such an impact on so many other problems we're facing in our society, including climate change. If you look at, I don't know if you can see the details, but at the very top of the gas emissions list of foods is beef, followed by lamb and cheese. So you have the environmental impacts here. You have a lot of impacts. I want to play what Donny Moss has put together from TheirTurn.net, which is a video that kind of summarizes one of the actions that is at the heart of this case. Remember, these actions occurred approximately 5 years ago in 2018 and 2019, hundreds of people were involved, but only one person has ended up being put on trial. That is Wayne Hsiung, the founder, essentially the leader of the open rescue movement. And the prosecution has been quoted as saying they want to cut the head off the snake of this movement.
We entered the facility and we immediately came to the front and chained ourselves to the front gate. Another team chained themselves to the slaughter line, which was actually turned on while one of the activists was chained onto the line. They didn't seem to care that he almost got killed from that.
This little baby was found in one of the barns, already dead.
The animal cruelty that is going on here is horrific. These animals are hatched on site, and then this building behind me is the slaughterhouse. And inside of this facility, there's massive amounts of barns, and they're mesh floors. And so their webbed feet press down into the mesh and cuts into their feet. These animals are meant to live in the water, and they never touch the water their entire lives. Never.
So Donny Moss, you put together that video. You were there. What do you make of the fact that hundreds of people are involved in 2 rescues and only Wayne Hsiung is on trial?
Well, it's especially interesting in light of the fact that I happen to have been standing right next to Wayne on the public street, on public property when he was arrested. And I remember thinking to myself, he's standing on a public street. You've got all of these people who are chained to the gate, to each other and to the gate, who are blocking the entrance. And you have other people who were inside allegedly committing crimes. So why is Wayne being arrested? Well, now, all of these years later, we know the answer because they were, quote, trying to cut the head off the snake. So, yeah, it is very interesting that all of these other people who were arrested, was it over 100? I can't remember the number, have, the charges have been dropped. But the one person who, in this case, didn't appear to commit a crime to any of us who were there was charged and is on trial. And a couple other observations. You saw in the video, the activists who were chained together holding dead ducks. They didn't have to look far for those ducks. They were, when they went inside that morning to conduct the the rescue and to document what was happening inside, those dead ducks were just lying around. They found them in garbage cans and scattered about, as I recall. And this, mind you, is the duck farm of duck farms. There are restaurants in California that advertise that proudly that they get their duck breast from this farm, as if it's something to be proud of. If this is the best of the best, can you imagine what the others look like? The other just observation I want to make is you saw all this police and riot gear. What was that? What was that odd show of force? We weren't rioters. The vast majority of people were standing there holding roses and singing songs about peace. So that the law enforcement response from the moment it happened until the trial, which is what we're seeing right now, is just sort of outsized and odd.
And I'm going to interrupt. We've got some breaking news to report to you. Carla Cabral has just walked out of the courtroom, and you were there to see the closing argument. Bring us up to date. What's going on?
Yeah, so this morning, the judge read out the entire instructions to the jury. That took at least 45 minutes. And then Deputy District Attorney Robert Weiner started his closing statements. That took us all the way until lunchtime. He focused on the crimes themselves, what the letter of the law is in finding Wayne guilty of these charges. He showed several pictures from each of the actions. He showed a picture of Wayne standing right at the gate of Sunrise, at Reichart. And they're just nitpicking little things. And the jury definitely seemed very bored by Wayner's statements. And then Wayne just now is still giving his closing statements that started around 1:40 or so. And he is laying out all of what happened and the intent, and Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg's testimony, Professor Hadar Abram's opinion, Bonnie Clapper's opinion. He's going through everything, all of the evidence, and really hammering home the idea of intent and the fact that everybody that was there, their number one goal was to provide aid to sick and dying animals at these factory farms, not in order to disrupt business and cause great harm to the business, but to give care to the animals. And the jury is absolutely watching everything that Wayne is saying. They are very, very attentive right now.
So I want everybody here on our panel to feel free to jump in with any questions. I'm sure you have a lot of them. Wow. Are you saying, Carla, that you think the jury's demeanor was different or perhaps more responsive when Wayne was speaking as opposed to the prosecutor?
Definitely. I could absolutely see that while the prosecutor was speaking, there was a lot of fidgeting. One thing inside the courtroom, the chairs are squeaky, and they are squeaking like crazy in the audience, and you can hear every little fidget. And people in the jury and the audience everybody was sort of fidgeting and looking around, and the jury, a couple members were even just slumped back in their seats, versus now when Wayne is speaking, you can see all eyes are on Wayne. They are watching. Wayne is getting to play several videos. Wayne played the video of Caroline Paul taking the dead chicken that she wasn't sure. She was trying to see if they were alive or dead, taking them out of the animal factory. That particular one showing video of Alexandra Paul rescuing the chicken whose head was slumped down. He got to play video of the officers, the video we talked about where the officers are checking the box.
I want to jump in and break down what you're saying. And first of all, thank you so much, Carla. I know you wanted to be in there for every last word that Wayne said, and it's a sacrifice for you to come out here and talk to us. We appreciate it, and all the viewers appreciate it as well. I want to go to a couple of things that you referred to. I believe this is the one that's the second video the jury was allowed to see during the trial of the conditions inside the facilities. Again, certainly not the worst that the prior investigation had uncovered.
Yes. Hold on. Hold on. Let me get that. Sorry. Okay. More light. Shine the light.
So, Carla, you're saying the jury saw that now for the second time during Wayne's closing. What was the reaction of the jurors?
Yes, the jurors, they looked dismayed. They didn't know, I can just say that they looked dismayed at what they saw at all of these videos. It was great to be able to play them again. They got to see the hen with the swollen eyes again. They got to see Caroline again. They got to see Alexandra, if you play those clips. And Wayne was able to explain that that was not the worst video. And he got to explain, because the prosecution tried to downplay, well, these were dead. Sometimes animals die, and that's just what happens when you have hundreds of thousands He said this. That's just what happens when you have hundreds of thousands of animals in this system. You're going to have mortality. You're going to have sickness. You're going to have death. And so they wanted to know why we would take a dead animal out. And it was precisely to show the officers who were there that there really is this going on and that they should be doing an investigation.
So Nathan, Semmel, you had a question for Carla.
Hi, Carla. Thank you so much for your reporting. It's really terrific and helpful. I remember in one of the prior trials when Wayne was giving his summation, he said something to the effect of, I really wish I could show you more, but I'm not allowed to. Certainly objectionable, but once you say it, you can't put it back in the bottle. Has he been able to say anything like that?
Yes, he has been able to say that, as well as when Paul Darwin Picklesheimer was on the stand, they were able to state that video was the least horrible video that they could have shown of the video that was taken. And Wayne just now in the summation also noted that there were hundreds of videos that they could have provided and could have shown this jury hundreds of videos.
Okay, I want to show a very significant video that I think is a slam dunk for the defense. It turns out the jury has seen this, and I believe you just said it was played again for the jury during Wayne's closing argument, which is wrapping up right now. Any minute now, the jury will begin deliberations, but check this out. This is from the day of the action. And one of the actions. And Wayne is talking to a police officer about both of them going into the facility to see what the conditions of the animals are. Check this out, because I think this completely undercuts the premise that, or the allegation that he was trespassing.
Have you guarantee you're going to ask the crowd?
Can we get a guarantee that
I already told you what my guarantee.
So you're going to go into the barn, we'll remove any sick and distressed animals.
I'll go with you.
Okay.
So Mike said that he said he would go with.
Okay,
so
can we get that on video recording, folks? If we can get that on video recording.
I have it on my video recording. Yes, they were video recording the whole thing. So if you could
let me
just say
talk
the
to
word,
folks. I'll talk to these folks and say, what's your name, sir?
Sergeant Thompson.
Thank you, Sergeant Thompson.
1240. 1241 now. Okay. 1241.
So I'll talk to folks. You don't want to shake my hand?
We did.
Okay. No, I wasn't sure if you're upset.
Okay.
No, I'll talk to these folks and say that the officer is willing to walk with us. We'll put on our biosecurity gear. We'll walk through and inspect the facility, see what we're finding there, and remove any disease or distressed animals here or there.
Okay, let's do it.
We can do that.
We'll check it out.
So that, okay. So, all right, folks. So the officer here, Sergeant, what was your name, Sergeant? Sergeant Thompson. Sergeant Thompson has offered us, and we should probably get this in video recording just because, so people can record this. I'll have another conversation with Sergeant. He's offered to allow us to go in with officers to inspect the facility, find any disease, distress, or rotten animals, wait for it, and possibly remove some of the sick ones on the condition that we step outside the property.
Well, there you go. Tell us how he contextualized that.
Well, so during the actual trial, the entirety of that video was played. During summation, just the clip was played where Wayne says, we can go in and take out sick and distressed animals, and the sergeant said he would go in, and also that Mike Weber would go in also. Just that little snippet. Excuse me?
The prosecutor would go in?
Mike Weber, sorry, the owner.
Sorry, the owner
Weber, Wayner. It's a little difficult to keep them separate. Yeah. But, it shows that Wayne was trying to, during the summation, state that this showed that there was an agreement. There was an agreement between himself, the officer, and the owner that he had permission to stay on the property and do this investigation. So there was not a an intent to refuse to leave, but instead an invitation to stay.
Okay, by the way, we invite the owner of any of these facilities, anybody from the animal agriculture industry at all on at any time. We would love to dialogue with you and hear your side. Had there been cameras allowed in the courtroom, we would have heard your side of the story, but there's not even a sketch of any of the witnesses allowed. So I want to really talk to everybody. What's your reaction to seeing that? Because to me, that's the most powerful argument in the entire case. To me, it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, Donny Moss, that they're saying, just step outside. Don't worry, we'll let you investigate. Just get your people outside, and then we're going to go in with you. And then as soon as they stepped outside, as soon as the activists stepped outside, they changed their minds, the authorities, and said, nope, you're not coming back in. And so it's kind of like, I don't want to use a speciesist term like bait and switch, but it seems like they misled them.
And also, how can an invitation to enter be then transformed into a trespass charge? So that's my first observation. My second observation is that there are two different incidents here. One that took place on the egg-laying hen farm, and that's the video we just watched where he was invited to be on the property in a sense. And then the second was at the duck farm where he wasn't on the property at all. So it seems like if I was a juror, I might be confused about the 4 different charges, all related to trespass at 2 different facilities where different actions took place. So the whole thing in my mind is very convoluted. When I was reading through the Sonoma trial tweets this afternoon, the jury instructions, and I saw the 4 charges and the judge was describing what the charges were, my head was spinning, and I couldn't help but think that these jurors are going to feel the same way. And maybe Nathan can comment on that more than I can, but the whole thing seems very confusing. And if I'm a juror in that deliberation room, I might be saying to myself, this is not a big deal, and I'm going to acquit.
Well, the other thing I want to say is trespass in my mind. And again, I'm not an attorney, but I was a teenager once, and I did jump into a couple of swimming pools that were connected to houses I didn't own. I think it was called pool hopping back in the day, but it never struck me as a particularly serious crime. And now we're hearing he could go to prison. Can you break that down for us? What exactly is he charged with, and how long could he go to prison for, Nathan?
Well, the most serious charge is the conspiracy to commit trespass, which is, and again, I'm a New York lawyer, so I've learned this, over the past few weeks, is in California, I think it's called a wobbler. What that essentially means is that the prosecution gets to decide whether they want to prosecute the conspiracy as a felony or a misdemeanor. Guess what? They charged it as a felony. And the theory is that there was a conspiracy to commit the offense of trespass, which is a misdemeanor. So my understanding is that the potential exposure on the conspiracy charge for each action is 1 year, and that the exposure on the trespass charges is 6 months for each action. But if Wayne is found guilty of the conspiracy charge, he can't be sentenced to 1.5 for each. The maximum would still be the 1 year, but there are 2 actions. So he potentially is facing, I believe, a maximum of 2 years.
So 2 years is a long time, a very long time. And I want to play again something that, if you're just joining us, last night, Wayne, who is facing up to, what did you say, 2 years in prison?
It's 2. Carla, correct me if I'm wrong in this. 2
years in prison. He spoke to his supporters, He just spoke in his bed with his dog.
So in 12 hours, the case is going to go to the jury after closing argument, and I've just been hanging out with this little guy because it could be years until I see him again. He's been acting really weird and nervous. I think he can tell something's about to change or something could change very dramatically. Now, he's 7 years old. We rescued him from a dog meat farm in 2016. So if I get near the maximum sentence, this could be the last time seeing him. So we're getting ready for that possibility. It's been a tough year for both of us because, I know, buddy. Our big family has become just the two of us. We had Lisa and Natalie and Flash and Joan. It's okay, Ollie. It's okay. And my mom, and we lost them all. It's going to be very sad if it's just him. But the good thing is he's got a co-parent, Priya, that he's ready to go to. She loves him very much, and no matter what happens to me, he's going to be in good shape. And I feel the same way about the animal rights movement too. There's this concept called losing forward that movements need to learn. And the concept of losing forward is that no matter what happens to any one of us, or really even to the movement as a whole, as long as we learn lessons from you and our supposed defeats, the movement grows stronger over time. And
wow. I mean, I just have to do a round robin on that. Michelle, just the courage and the grace under pressure.
I'm telling you, even in all of this anxiety and despair before the announcement, he's so profound. He's still like, when Wayne talks, the first time I heard him talk, I felt his heart. And I think that's what the jury, that's why they were so attentive, as Carla described, because when he speaks, he's really speaking through his heart, and you can feel it, you can get it. And even if it's complicated, the terms, the procedures, you get it because he's speaking more than words. And I'm really hoping that this jury is going to see, feel, and really understand that to their core. You're playing the video of going through the slaughterhouse, and I was thinking, like, as a juror, if I was not a new activist as I am, I would not be prepared for shocking video like that. Just the fact that it's this dark hole and all the grossness at the bottom and all the dead birds, and like, I would feel like this is a horror show. This should not even be happening. And this is why the big animal agriculture factories are keeping this a secret. So I'm just really hoping, I'm sending good energy. I chanted earlier, and I just hope that this is the beginning of change.
Well, what strikes me is that I always seem, Carla, like we're all nervous, right? This is a nerve-wracking time. The jury is just about to get this case any second now. And this indicates that it's been a long closing statement by Wayne. I mean, he started at approximately 1:30. It's already 2:47. So this has been going on, well over an hour, but he never seems nervous. That's the weird thing. He doesn't seem like rattled. What was his demeanor during his closing statement?
Wayne is Wayne. I was just thinking that for any of us who have heard Wayne speak over the years, we know that he comes from a place of honesty and transparency. And nowadays, people are so very distrustful, and so it can be hard to believe that anybody could have such goodwill. And even some of us are often shocked at how nice he speaks about owners of these animal factories, and that so many people are victims. And during his closing, he has been his same steadfast Wayne. He is calm, he is assertive, he is kind, and he is clear. And the only thing I will say that bothered me is he has been interrupted. The time that I was in there, he was already interrupted twice, once by the stenographer and once by the judge on behalf of the stenographer, again, to slow down. The other side was not stopped. Nobody else has been stopped. I don't like that personally. I don't know how the jury feels about that, or if they care or notice, but Wayne has not faltered. He is remaining steadfast, and you can feel, like any of us who have heard him, you can feel his honesty, his sincerity, and rightly some of the gravity of this situation.
Well, let me just say this. The stenographer has been noted for being what we might call disruptive, telling him to slow down over and over again, making noises, things like that. Let's hear Wayne's closing argument in another case where he was acquitted. In Utah, he took some piglets out of a factory farm. In fact, we're not calling them factory farms. Donny Moss says call them animal factories. He was ultimately acquitted, but here was his closing argument. You tell me if you think he's a fast talker that the stenographer can't keep up with.
I wish I could tell you the full story of what happened. We were on very direct orders to talk only about, the night of March 7th, 2017, only about 2 pickets. But it's an interesting thing hearing someone as compelling as Juan, and he's a very compelling speaker, talk about what's in your heart in a way that you know is not true, and it's not. And honestly, the best way to explain it is the way Rick explained it, that there's a big difference between stealing an animal and trying to help someone who needs some help.
So that's not a fast talker, Lindsey Baker. That is a very, actually, just average speed talker. And this stenographer has been noted for, I would call it shenanigans in the past. Your thoughts?
I totally agree with you. I just feel like behind the scenes, I just imagine this pact between that the judge and the stenographer have discussed it. It's like, to the stenographer, it's almost like he's troubling her, and the same thing with the judge. It's like she seems bored, she's rolling her eyes, she's doing all these things. It's like, you're in my way, you're causing problems for me, as opposed to being there to make the environment that is most optimal for justice to be served. And everything she is doing seems to be just for the opposite. And somebody that works with her or under her is definitely a reflection of her attitudes, feelings, in my opinion. So I would say that.
What sense are we getting of what's going to happen next? Carla, are you hearing anything? You're there.
I'm sorry. I'm doing multiple things, but I am sitting. I'm with some of the other. Let me see if I can move this. I've got a lot of activists who are sitting out here waiting that did not make it in the courthouse because there's only 27 seats in the courthouse itself. It's a rather small courtroom, and we had a larger one when they were picking the jury, but there's only 27 seats. That might sound like a lot, but it's really not when you think of all of the amazing activists who are coming out here in support of this case and Wayne and the animals. So today especially, I don't know how many activists are here, and they packed the courtroom. They've been in the hallways. They're now sitting outside eating snacks, and I was just asking them a few questions.
Yeah, and any of them who want to come on and comment, we'd love to hear from them. I mean, they're all the way there in Sonoma County, and
I've got one of the activists who was present at the. Were you at both or Reichard? I was at Reichard. Let me move this.
Okay.
Hey.
Hello. Yeah. So, what are you've were at both of these actions? What is your emotional state? How are you feeling in this very, very tumultuous moment where somebody might go to prison for 2 years?
Hey, I'm Christina. I was at Reichard, and I'm feeling like this is a culmination of just years and years of work and so many sacrifices that so many people have made to try to expose animal cruelty happening in Sonoma County. So this is a really exciting moment. It sounds like we might get a verdict today. We might not get a verdict today, depending on how fast the closing arguments are and how quickly the jurors are going to come to a decision. So I'm feeling like an energy of nervousness and also feeling unsure what's going to happen. But in general, there are so many people here today. It's a really exciting day for everyone who's been a part of these campaigns for years to finally see something happening and a decision being made.
And Christina might not know this, but she was mentioned. She is actually a named participant in this court case because she was one of those who locked down and had a deceased duck on her lap at Reichardt Duck Farm.
Yeah, Carla told me this the other day, and I wasn't surprised because they've been naming a lot of people who've been taking action. It's almost like they're trying to intimidate people who are attending. It's almost like they're trying.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened
what
there? Something just
right?
happened. You're back. You're back. You're back. Apologies. Go ahead.
Oh, all good. I was just saying that it's almost like they're trying to intimidate people into being afraid of taking action by trying to name people who participated in action in the past couple years. But we all know that we're doing this publicly, that we're not afraid to be honest and open about what we're doing. And that's the point. That's why we're posting about it on social media. We actually want as many people as possible to know about it. So it's an interesting tactic the prosecutor is trying, and it's not really working.
What is your reaction to the fact that this is, we're about to go on verdict watch. We're finishing up the final closing argument by Wayne. The is going to get this any second now. I mean, he started at 1:30. It's now 3. So that's an hour and a half that he has been speaking. I would have to think any second now we're going to head into the next phase of this, that is verdict watch. What is your reaction as somebody who put your, you know what, on the line by participating in these actions, that there's very little media coverage there? Is there any that you see?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm really hoping that when we do get a verdict, that it'll be a big moment, and that's when the media will come out and be excited to report on like a groundbreaking new thing that's come out, that people are supporting animal rescue. Ordinary people in the jury are supporting animal rescue and are not willing to convict someone who took action and was willing to risk getting charged and getting convicted of a crime to stand up for what's right. So I'm really hoping that the media latches on and has a compelling story to tell, but that's something to see in the next couple hours and the next day, whether or not we'll get to have that.
No, and I can just jump in and say no. There's no other press, nobody is here but you, Jane. Thank you to UnchainedTV for being here and allowing this to be broadcast to the world.
Well, it's a team effort. All of these folks had appointments that they canceled to be here, and we're all basically, that's why we started Unchained TV, because I was in mainstream news media for 38 years, and they say you have to get naked, jump on a fashion runway, or get arrested to get media coverage. Apparently now even getting arrested and risking 2 years in prison is not going to get you media coverage, which is a shame. There's so many issues here. There's the issue of free speech that, I mean, I would think the ACLU would be all over this case. But there's also, look, Ellen Dent, you're with Animal Alliance Network. You do a lot of these kinds of outreach to communities, you know, different things, but like pig vigils and working to get the plant-based treaty approved. What is your sense of where the mainstream media is when it comes to all of these issues?
Well, I think it comes down to what you said before, who funds them. And, you know, we know that this is a lot of pharmaceutical companies and, you know, probably animal agriculture companies. I'm sure you know better than I do, Jane, exactly who those people are, but you have to follow the money on this. And so they're not going to go against their sponsors. So, I mean, I think that's what we're dealing with here, but this is a historical case. They should be there. They should be unbiased with their coverage and be there to see this. So, I mean, let's just hope that they pick it up and they do the right thing and cover this, you know, when this verdict is, you know, made available, you know, when that comes through.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carla.
I just want to say that I got word that Wayne is done with his closing statement. They took a brief recess, and then Bob Wayner is going to give his final, he gets the last word. So he said he was going to keep it brief, and then the jury will go into deliberation. It's already 3 o'clock here. I don't know. The word is that we probably will not get a verdict today, but as we've seen before, I wouldn't make that call just yet.
Again, here is the defendant, Wayne Hsiung. He is the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, which is a very, very influential animal rights group that has gotten more write-ups in the New York Times than almost any other group in recent years. He's also considered the leader of the Right to Rescue movement. And the prosecutors have been quoted as saying they want to cut the head off the snake of this movement. And they are going after Wayne Hsiung. And he has now finished his closing argument. The prosecutor's going to do a rebuttal. I think he mentioned to the judge he was going to keep it short. So, you know, we are in a very, very historic case. And the tragedy of it is that this should be all over the media. This is history in the making. And why is it history in the making? Because animal agriculture is one of the most destructive industries on the planet. It is responsible for habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, preventable lifestyle, human diseases, pollution, drought, all sorts of things. And yet it's not held to account. So when these people go in there and do things, and instead of what they've exposed being investigated, they're arrested and prosecuted, that's a big story. So I think that by this whole cut the head off the snake idea, that the idea would be, oh, if we convict him, it'll scare people from wanting to do this and they won't do it. And honestly, I've got to go back to Carla on that. And maybe you can ask some of the folks there, if he was convicted, do you think that would scare them and prevent them from doing it?
Yeah, I'll walk back over. There's a lot of people out here, so we can definitely ask. But, you know, I don't know why they would think that it definitely would probably scare maybe new people that have not quite joined activism yet. But there are activists fighting for so many different injustices that take bold actions. And we all know that some activists have not just gone to prison for a long period of time, but have even died because of their activism. And they're not going to stop us. They can't stop us, not until all of these injustices are taken care of. So, I mean, I can ask Conrad. Let me ask one of my buddies here. Conrad has taken many actions. Oh dear, there we go. So if Wayne, regardless of the outcome, would you be scared? Would you no longer perform your activism?
Absolutely not. No, this is very important. We need to keep on applying pressure to the agencies, the companies, even individuals to get our movement forward. So yes.
All right, thank you.
All right.
You guys have questions, let me know.
Well, yes, there's a question that Ellen Dent has. When the jury goes to deliberate, is Wayne allowed to speak, or is he still gagged during that time?
No, I can find out for sure, but it is my understanding that once the jury goes into deliberations, the gag order is lifted and Wayne will be able to speak, and I'm sure he will come out, and I will verify at that time, and he can speak with us. And I have with me also Alex Taylor. This is another person who locked themselves with a bike lock to the shackles where the ducks were hanging at Reichardt Duck Farm, and then went and moved and chained himself to the gate at Reichardt Duck Farm.
That's right.
Wow. Have you? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Give us your thoughts on this momentous moment in terms of being a moment in history.
For this trial, I feel like the trial's going well. The only other trial I went to was the Merced one, and I heard that 8 out of 10 times we get acquitted on these cases. I also heard that this is one that would be likely to, or easy to appeal, and could make good case law if we did lose. So I feel like pretty good either way.
If we lost, would that stop you from performing more activism?
No, if anything, probably make me want to do it even more. I feel like no matter what, I'll be like, yes, let's go do more.
Wow. Yeah. So it's Michelle, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was reading the tweets, and we were talking about follow the money. They were saying that a lot of the activists couldn't fit in the small courtroom, but they took the Farm Bureau people and moved them to the top line, and they went in. Now, is that fair?
Well, okay, so let me just read this. I cannot independently confirm this, but somebody said Sonoma County Farm Bureau got front rows to closing arguments, escorted by officers, taking seats away from Wayne supporters. What do we know about this, Carla?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, it's a very small courthouse, and there are lots of us, and we've been having to ask people to please, only go in once. Don't go in if you've been in another day, only if it's your first time. Anyway, this after lunch, and even before lunch first, there were 2 people from the farm. I don't know if they're from the Farm Bureau or they're on the opposition side, and an officer actually escorted them past us, and then they got to go into the courtroom first before we went in, even though we had been there and waiting for quite some time. And then after lunch, when we went in, they also got to go in, and there were people already inside the courtroom taking up our spaces that were part of the district attorney's office. There were, what I saw, there were 5 seats already taken. Those people had not been there before. I don't know what purpose they had being inside the courtroom, but that took up 5 of our precious 27 spaces.
What do you think? Let's do a round robin. What do you think, Lindsey Baker? What was happening with this special treatment for people who are in the opposition?
It's just part of the whole catastrophe and travesty here, but I think it's going to backfire on them. I think it's going to show the jury exactly what is going on. It's very obvious there is bias. How far this bias will go, I think, it will continue until people wake up. The jury hopefully will make the right decision, and it will show the prosecutors, the factory farmers, that they have to change. The public is not going to stand for this. We know what's going on. People are not stupid, and you can't suppress information thinking that's going to help. And if he does get convicted, as so many have said, there's so many inequities, it's going to work in the favor of Wayne. And that's
I honestly think it was possibly Donny Moss. What do you think? Trying to intimidate Wayne during his closing argument? Like, you know how if you have to do something and then all of a sudden like a VIP walks in and you got to do the same thing. You're like, oh boy, I better do it. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not convinced that Wayne would be intimidated by that. I was wondering if those seats were taken by the DA's office, I don't know, as a way to show the jury that it's not only supporters of the defendant who are in the room, but there are also people on the other side who are not sympathetic to the defendant. That was my initial thought when we learned about the seats being taken sort of ahead of the people who were waiting on the defendant's side. Jane, I wanted to also acknowledge or answer one of the questions you raised as to whether or not this would stop, a conviction would stop other activists from engaging in open rescue. And it brought me back to one of the animal liberation marches, or a couple of them that I went to in San Francisco as part of the Animal Liberation Conference, where these mass actions took place. One of the chants that they make they chant during these marches is "Love is unstoppable. Another world is possible." And when you have hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the streets chanting this, you just know that many of them really believe it and really are going to put actions behind those words.
I don't think Wayne would be intimidated at all, but I think that there's a sense that maybe it's pressure, I think. And also, I will say this, in high profile cases, and ironically, this is the most high profile case that's getting zero media coverage aside from Unchained TV, which, I certainly hope everybody who's watching this online downloads the Unchained TV app. That's one of the things that you can do for us, because we are a nonprofit and we are available we're the only vegan streaming network on the planet. And we are available on your phone. We're available online, and we're also available on all Samsung TVs, Amazon Fire Stick, Roku device. So we really hope that if you like what we're doing, getting the word out, that you support us by downloading it. You can watch it. I've got it on my TV right behind me. You can see it right here. That's right there. That's a Samsung TV. It's on every Samsung smart TV. We've got another guest adding to the stage right now, the one and only Curtis Vollmer, who has been leading the petition drive. Bring us up to date. What are your feelings right now as we all sit here on pins and needles, and verdict watch is about to begin any second?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jane. Thanks for covering the trial. I was just in. I hope you don't. This motorcycle's about to leave here. Sorry.
That's all right.
I was just in there and I watched Wayne's closing argument. It lasted probably close to an hour. It was pretty long. But I feel out of all of the cases that I've now kind of sat through and been involved with, the Merced trial that happened earlier this year and the Utah Smithfield pig trial that happened over a year ago now. It's wild to say that was over a year ago. This one feels like we have the best case, just from a matter of fact. I know that both Paul and Wayne had packed all their things up, and they got their finances in order. They were prepared to go to jail, in the Smithfield trial, and we all thought that was going to happen. But just the way that the charges are laid out, I don't feel like the defense has made a strong case at all. Wayne went through all of the charges in both of the actions, the Sunrise action and the Reichard action. He showed clips of him interacting and giving handshakes and having these agreements with the officers. He was never asked to leave at Sunrise. Very compelling stuff. This isn't the stuff that criminals do. They don't shake hands with officers, and they don't make good faith agreements with the farm owner and the officers to stay. And then with regards to Reichard, Wayne wasn't involved with the planning or the production of any of that, any of the things that he's being charged with. And none of the evidence has shown that he was. So yeah, for those reasons, I feel like we have the best case here for an acquittal out of the 3 trials that have happened now in the last year.
Well, of course, I'd like to think you're right. I've unfortunately been shocked by many decisions over the years. Casey Anthony case, it was considered open and shut, and she walked. She was found guilty of lying. The Michael Jackson case was considered open and shut when it started, acquitted on all counts. And then there's the opposite, where you think it's a weak case and there's a conviction. So, of course, I hope you're absolutely right. Over the years, I've learned it's very hard to predict juries, but That's why we're here, and we're all waiting for this momentous decision. Lindsey Baker, you had a question for Curtis.
Yeah, I think Donny had the same question about the jurors' reaction, what Curtis had observed about it. But in particular, I'm not sure if you were there yesterday when I believe it was Matt Johnson that had sprayed manure on the lawn of the CEO of Smithfield and also impersonated as a new CEO. When he was on the witness stand and explain why he had done that, that's what happens to families, poor families that live near these facilities. And also, I guess he didn't say much to defend, impersonating the CEO, but that's pretty cool that he could do it, in my opinion. But what was the reaction that you have seen of the jury?
So I didn't see much reaction. I thought there would be more, honestly, when they brought up Matt's antics. I was trying to look at them, and I think there might have been one person that kind of like cracked like a smile or something of that nature. But for the most part, the jury's been pretty stoic. The few times that I've been in there, Carla's been in there a lot more than I have. I actually almost had to remove myself from Matt's testimony because of how just I was there with him in Virginia when a lot of that stuff was happening with regards to the poop action, the shitfield action, and the dancing emoji in the city hall meeting action. And if they would have played that, I probably would have had to remove myself. I would have been laughing. I wouldn't have been able to contain myself. But the jury has been pretty stoic on from my perception of it. And then Wayne's closing actually was very kind of emotional, and he actually showed everybody walking out of the farm at the sunrise action and carrying the chickens in the bio suits. That clip has been used on like countless DXE videos, and you've probably all seen it in some form or another. I thought for sure I'd see maybe one of the jurors kind of tear up, something of that nature. I didn't see it. Again, it doesn't mean it wasn't moving. I know that we had a couple of our people that were crying, but if only everybody felt the way that we felt, the world would be a better place, right?
Donny has a question for you.
Yeah, so Curtis, if an appeal is what would be needed to establish right to rescue case law, then would a conviction in this case be like bittersweet?
Yeah, I think that it would, because there's a lot of good grounds for appeal, even like on all of the pretrial stuff, on all of the pretrial questions. We looked on almost everything, and we felt like we had like pretty damn good, reasons for trying to introduce the evidence that we were trying to introduce. And the fact that almost nothing went our way on pretrial, not even getting into trial, again, just pretrial matters, I think would be great to take to an appeals court.
And explain, Nathan Semmel, why a loss is sometimes better strategically than a win, because that always blows my mind and I still can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, because a jury will say either guilty or not guilty. They don't tell you why. They don't tell you why they came to the conclusion they did, and it has no binding effect on any future case. What happened in Utah has no bearing on what happens here. But in an appeals case, when you appeal a decision of the court, it has a binding effect, and courts in that jurisdiction are bound by the decisions of that appeals court. Now, would that in and of itself establish a right to rescue? Probably not. It would have to be a really, really bold decision by a court to say that this is not a theft. So if we were talking about a theft case, that this is not a theft because the activists, based on what they saw, had a right to rescue. That could potentially establish the right to rescue. In a case like this one, the judge really handcuffed the Wayne when she ruled that that 597E was not applicable. That it would only apply to like shelters with.
And what's 597E?
597E is a California law that essentially says that if impounded animals are do not receive food or water or care for 12 hours, that people have a right to enter property and provide assistance. The judge in this case has ruled that 597E is not applicable and that the jury is not going to be instructed that 597E is applicable. What they are going to be instructed on is that Wayne had a good faith belief that it was applicable because he spoke to a professor, he spoke to an attorney who advised him beforehand that 597E applied. So if Wayne is convicted and there's an appeal, an appeals court could say that decision on 597E was wrong and that it doesn't just apply to cats and dogs and shelters, it applies to all animals.
But
that would be historic.
597E had been changed and limited, so that might not work.
Well, it's still very ambiguous. I mean, it's not like the law says, but no other animals. It is there. You know, you can argue both sides of the coin on this one, and an appeals court would decide that. And then
let me jump in here and play, because we're talking about all this wonky stuff, but there was testimony about cannibalism in this trial. Testimony that animals were eating each other. Got to think there's got to be a law somewhere against that.
So we went from no cannibalism to little cannibalism to weekly cannibalism in just 10 minutes. When he was examined by the state initially, he said, the animals here are treated so well. But when I cross-examined him and showed him some of the records from inside the farm, he went, okay, maybe there's a little cannibalism. And then we pulled out the actual records that showed every week there are birds eating each other alive. He finally conceded, okay, it's weekly. But it's not mass cannibalism. Not every bird dies at my farm from cannibalism. But how many birds cannibalizing each other does it take for it to be a problem?
I mean, this is what, 597E and this arcane thing. I mean, isn't there a law against animal cannibalism? Wait, and I'll throw it to you. You're the attorney here, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, there are animal cruelty laws on the books. So, if you are creating an environment in which animals can do nothing but cannibalize each other, then you are violating animal cruelty laws. But it comes back to the same thing that we've been talking about all along, which is this is systemic. It is law enforcement protecting industry. It is industry lobbyists. It is lobbyists affecting the legislature, who affects the governor and, the executives, and then in turn the judiciary. So, it is a systemic issue that we are up against. It is not an accident that the people in the Farm Bureau were allowed to cut the whole line and walk right into that courtroom because, they're all friends. And it's
I want to jump in and show that there was a clip. I don't know if this was shown, Carla. You can give us the backstory, but here's a clip of a law enforcement officer saying, basically, we're on the side of you guys, the farmers.
I'm right there too. All I'm doing is we're checking the box.
That's body cam footage from Deputy of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. He was present at both farm actions and was the last witness to be called by the prosecution yesterday. Deputy stated that 80 people were arrested and specifically identified activists arrested for chaining themselves hard entrance gate. He also testified that he believed Wayne was the leader of the group. During cross-examination, Wayne asked if he had any bias toward the farm owners. He said no, despite saying this.
Obviously, I'm on your guys' side on this, but they're never going to see it our way.
So he's talking to one of the farmers, in quotes. I mean, these are ginormous, massive facilities. You wanted to say something, Ellen Dent?
I don't think I did. Yeah, I'm just, wondering about the law about 597E, if it applies how it was stated, during the alleged crime, during the time that the charges were brought.
In other words, you're saying at the time that these events happened, there was 597E. Was it changed before or after?
I can jump in on that real quickly. Yeah. So, to my understanding, is shortly after the Reichert action, the California legislature changed the language of 597E as some sort of like non-substantial technical change to bring it up to speed type of thing. And it was part of some omnibus package that Assemblymember Vince Vaughn Vince Fong put through. And so what happened shortly after the Reichard action, I believe it was the 2018-2019 legislative cycle here in California, is 597E got changed from what it was, from what everyone's been talking about it in court and trial, to basically only applying to shelter animals. So, and Nathan can correct me if I'm wrong, yes, we could theoretically, appeal this and win on the appeal on the 597E defense. But even if we win that appeal, it doesn't really help us moving forward because 597E got changed through the normal legislative process. And there's a really, really good Intercept article about this and the backroom deals that happened to get 597E changed, because it only changed a few words, but it completely ruined it for activists.
Yeah, but if it happened if that change occurred after this event, that should be irrelevant. Nathan, that should be irrelevant. I mean, it's what was happening at the time of this event.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is the jury was read 597E because it's come up so much, and they were read the old charge. And Carla or Curtis can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think they were read the old one. But again, the jury cannot use 597E under any interpretation to reach its conclusion. At least they're not supposed to. That it's not a defense to the case. The defense is that Wayne, in good faith, listened to his attorney, listened to a professor, and felt that 597E was applicable, that he and the others were allowed to go in and render aid because 597E, at least at that time, allowed it.
But I don't even understand why this is even an issue when we have video of the police law enforcement saying, oh yeah, we'll go in together and see what's happening with these animals. And if they're sick, we're going to take them out and just have your people go outside and and then they change. I mean, to me, that's a slam dunk. I want to bring in Simone Reyes, who has covered previous trials, and a very well-known animal rescuer, who's also the star of Big Little Lies on Unchained TV. Wayne, you've seen many of these cases. We are on pins and needles. The closing arguments that were supposed to be done basically before lunch are apparently still dragged on. We would know, right, if they're on verdict watch, Carla? So what's the big picture here?
Sorry, they are on. I mean, they are done giving closing statements. So I don't. I'll get back to you on where exactly we are.
Okay, yeah, because we should really be on verdict watch right now. But what's the big picture here with these cases, Simone? What's at stake?
Well, it's not just about the individual lives. I mean, as you know, I was in animal rights and still am, obviously, for like many, many years. But now being, in animal rescue, it's sort of a whole other thing, right? Because you really see that it's partially about the individual animals, but we're all just treading water, right? In the big scheme of things, whether it's legally, whether it's legislation, whether it's, animals on your plate, animals on your back. We have to be able to have the right to rescue when it's an individual animal, but it's such a bigger thing. We need to be able to show everybody the big picture, which is animals are simply not ours. And in order to get that done, having these trials and getting as much media attention as we can is super important, because people need to not just see them as individuals, but as a collective of, sentient beings that need to have a voice and need to have rights. And I think we're making progress slowly but surely. I was just with Gene Bauer an hour ago, and we were talking about.
He is the founder of Farm Sanctuary.
And we were just talking about this case and talking about how what a hero Wayne is and everybody at DXE, because people's lives are literally on the line, in terms of like where they're going to live if they go to jail or whatever. And we were just talking about how it's so important for the movement, this part of it, the part of being able to have the right to rescue and being able to speak to animals as individuals, but also as the collective.
Yes, well said. I know you have to leave for a while, Ellen. You're a mother of a young, fabulous young daughter. What are your final thoughts before you hop off?
I'm just hoping that the jury makes the right decision. I know that if I was on that jury and I saw this compelling evidence, as limited as it was, that it would absolutely, rip my heart apart, especially if it was something that I had never seen. And a lot of the public just, they haven't seen footage like this. They don't know the truth, and they need to be able to see that. And they absolutely limited what this jury saw, but just seeing what they did see would have appealed to me. It would have appealed to my integrity as a person and what I would do if I was in this situation that these activists were in, and they had the opportunity to try to save another sentient being as they would want to be saved if they were in this situation that they are inside of these animal factories, as Donny Ma says.
Well said, brilliantly said, and thank you for joining us, and feel free to come back at any time. I'm now concerned. The Wayne's closing argument ended a while ago. We had understood that the prosecution's rebuttal remarks were going to be very, very brief. So can somebody check out to see what's going on? Because for all we know, they're deliberating.
So
I have asked.
I think that.
Go ahead, Curtis.
I think that somebody will, we're all out here. There's maybe a third of us are out here. The rest of everybody's in the courtroom. I'm assuming that somebody is going to come out here once the jury goes and deliberate and says they're on deliberation. Potentially everybody. But yeah. I really do not think that the jury is going to come to a conclusion within the next hour. This judge is very time oriented, and at 4:30 it's done for the day, go home. So there's obviously it's possible, but I don't think there's under any circumstance where the jury is going to come to a conclusion in an hour. I think they're going to go home, they're going to come back, and they're going to deliberate tomorrow.
Yes. And I would agree with you, but I certainly don't want to go off the air till at least we know that the jury has the case, because I always say high-profile trials, and again, the irony of this is the most high-profile trial, the most significant trial that nobody's covering except for Unchained TV right now, but they're runaway freight trains. You never know what's going to happen. The famous case, the O.J. Simpson case, was a many months long trial. If you could include pretrial, it went on for, well over a year. 4 hours. The jury came back in 4 hours. Okay. That was one of the biggest shockers, but it does happen. So you never know. And you don't know what can happen in between. You had said, Carla, that the judge had said if anybody mentions animal cruelty, she's going to declare a mistrial. Remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she also seemed adamant to have this thing done by last Friday, but here we are. Things are proceeding. Like I said, the jury is paying attention. They're taking this extremely seriously. I think that the presence of all of these amazing activists here has awakened them to understand, just like they did in Utah and definitely in Merced, that these are not simple cases about a simple trespass or somebody stealing somebody else's property. These issues are gigantic, they're meaningful, and the jury, I think, has taken that in, and they are going to take their time with this, I hope. Although, like you said, you never know what's going to happen. And I just want to say, for those videos that you played earlier, yes, those videos with the officers were played in court. They got to see both. All of that video that you showed was showed in court. Wayne showed in his summation. He also showed the snippet of the sergeant allowing him to be there. So they are getting to see some evidence and hearing that they're not seeing all of the evidence.
Yes. And, the case is really so much bigger, as you mentioned, that, Donny, you had a question. Go for it. Please jump in with any questions.
Yeah. So Curtis, you were inside, or maybe Carla, you were both inside when the jury got instructions. And when I was reading through the instructions on the Sonoma trial Twitter feed, I found myself getting lost in the weeds, very confused by the instructions and by the fact that there were 4 charges that to me all sounded very similar. Do you think that the jurors were confused by that? And what impact, if any, could that have on them? And I know that's really guessing.
I was not in there during jury instructions. Carla was, but Wayne did a really good job of going over everything during his closing. And the other important piece of information is that mistake of law is and or was permissible for pretty much everything, just like the Merced trial. So and Wayne did a really good job of explaining that as well. So not only do the facts and the witnesses and all the evidence kind of are really good for us here on their own, the jury does have the mistake of law kind of legal hook to fall back on if they want to. Yeah, I think Wayne did a really good job explaining that. And maybe Nathan, you can explain the mistake of law with regards to intent if you want to. You probably do a better job of it than me.
Go for it. And I have some questions about what possibly could be happening inside the court. Okay, you had the closing arguments. He started at 1:30. He ended around 2:40, 2:50, let's say. It's now almost an hour later. I don't understand what's happening. They already got jury instructions earlier today. So the rebuttal case was supposed to be short.
We sent somebody back in. We sent somebody back in to find out what's going on.
I sent Conrad in. I sent Conrad in to go up, and he'll come back down and let us know exactly what's happening. And I just want to say, as far as the jury instructions, as I mentioned earlier, the jury was squirming in their seats. If you can imagine sitting in a classroom, listening to your teacher go on and on for 45 minutes straight with just piece of information after piece of information, they are definitely going to need some time just to even understand what the instructions really mean for them.
For sure. And don't they have to pick a jury 4 person, Nathan? So hit that one and mistake of law.
Sure. Yeah. When they go in the back, they'll pick a 4 person, I imagine, unless it's already been chosen based on, California might do first juror in the box is the 4 person. Generally in New York, it's the 4 person is chosen by their peers, by their fellow jurors. On mistake of law, it's a difficult defense. It's not used very often, but essentially you have to be able to establish a good faith reason for why, a good faith belief that your actions were legal. And I say good faith because, I guess you could always find an attorney out there who will tell you what you want to hear. If you asked the lawyer, is robbery legal, and you were told, oh yeah, robbery, sure, that's legal. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Of course it's not. But this is complex. This is not easy stuff. And, so when the activists get a expert opinion from, Bonnie's a federal prosecutor. She's smart. We know her. Hadar. These are very, very intelligent, brilliant people whose opinion carries a lot of weight for them. So they go to these actions knowing what these experts believe the law to be. Why wouldn't they rely on those experts? So when they take the actions that they do and get arrested for it, what's the first thing they say? I was told I can do this. And we know that happened in this case because we have it on video. We have Wayne's first reaction with the police officer. And what does he say in real time? He says, we're there to provide care. If you get these animals help, I'll show you. If you get these animals help, we're out of here. We're not here to trespass. We're not here to put on a big display. This isn't about veganism. This isn't about animal rights. This is about getting these animals care. And the reason why that's so important is because it's one thing for a person to get on the witness stand months, and in this case, 5 years later, and tailor a story that sort of comports to the law. Here we saw in real time his instinctive response, which was, I'm here to provide care. If you do that, I have no reason to be here. We're all going to get out of here. And I just think that video is so valuable, and I hope the jury sees it that way.
Well, I cannot wait to find out what is going on in court. Again, okay, let's find out. Sorry.
There you go. So I just found out that, in fact, they are still doing the rebuttal right now. And it's not Deputy District Attorney Bob Wayner, but in fact, Jessica Mills, who is, I'm not sure what her title is, but they've been doing the case together. Some witnesses were crossed by one, some were crossed by the other. And so she is the one giving the rebuttal, and it's still going on.
Well, this is completely crazy because, and as you can see, Simone has to answer the doorbell. Somebody rang the bell, so we've got a empty seat. But to me, Donny Moss, this is completely crazy, and I think this could backfire because we've all seen enough TV to know closing arguments. The defense, then in this case, the prosecution, then the defense. If the prosecution is coming back and spending an hour on their rebuttal, I would be irritated if I was a juror. I would be really irritated. You're shaking your head, Michelle. What are you saying there?
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, from Carla's description, they were already bored from the first go around. And now, on top of Wayne's compelling closing, which I'm sure was heartfelt, this woman is going to cap it with something and try to rebut and go on and on and on. And I'm sure the jury just wants to get in there. And didn't they also ask for transcripts? That was another one of my questions. But I did want to bring up, I think those people from the other side were put into the jury box because DXC's...
Not the jury box. They were
the audience. I'm sorry. They were put into the audience to take the space of the other activists because DXC is doing such a great job with the Twitter and the information. And I think my theory is they're trying to push out as many people that could get out the information that's going on to all of us, because it's really riveting and it's giving us what we need because we don't have pictures, we don't have video, we don't have sketches. You know, I think they're trying and they're grasping for anything they can to they're desperate. They're realizing they're not making headway. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, to me, go ahead, Lindsey.
No, I was just having a feeling about the judge, and this is totally, my opinion, but it's like, I almost feel like she's beholden to some other people that she has to answer to, and she's doing every single thing she can to make it as difficult as possible for Wayne to get a fair trial, and we've seen it in so many ways. And I was wondering if the 45 minutes of instruction to the jury, that's more of a question I have. Is that something that is the norm? Is that protocol? Or is that up to her how long she wants to do it? Because I feel like she might be deliberately making the jury so uncomfortable, so irritated that they are going to be in a very negative frame of mind.
Interesting. Nathan, is 45 minutes? I mean, I've covered murder trials where the instructions to the jury have gone on for 45 minutes, but I've never, honestly, just the idea that a trespass case is costing this much taxpayer money. We know, and I say this every time we do this live coverage, there's a crisis in California of major theft at big box stores to the point where big box stores are closing down because there's mass thefts occurring. This is 5 years ago, 70 chickens and ducks who were I'm not a vet, but there was testimony and allegations that most of them were sick. Okay, some of them were dead. How could the jury sit there and not say what is going on here? I mean, I just say as a taxpayer in California, I would be wondering, and maybe I'll throw this to Simone, what the heck is going on? You're California.
We are California, but there's an illness called disconnect that seems to be still quite prevalent. And, I think it's a challenge sometimes for people to take the side of, what's right, because oftentimes taking the side of what's obviously right to us as activists makes them completely in the wrong, right? It's like just seeing us as mirrors is a problem. And a jury, member, can certainly bring their own private feelings into this. People aren't machines. They're supposed to look at just the facts. The facts are abuse. The facts are, are sickness. The facts are all these things. But, then what did you have at lunch while you were deliberating? Maybe you had a chicken sandwich or some nuggets or something like that. So it's very complicated. I think I've been on a jury before, and to say that people weren't, 100%, doing what the jury instructions were. I think everybody tries, but we're also human. And so I think whenever animals are presented to people, pretty much whether it's, on a trial or anywhere else, suddenly the disconnect becomes very apparent. Because if you are against animal abuse, how can you still be wearing animals, eating animals, and using animals for entertainment or for animal research? It goes far and wide. So I think we're immediately at a disadvantage in a lot of cases, just walking through life as being mirrors, and people don't like mirrors. Mirrors are very uncomfortable for people.
Well, what you're saying is so significant, especially considering that the prosecution constantly brought up how the people who were testifying for the defense were vegans. Let me play you a couple of clips.
I was shocked.
6 full weeks into the Sonoma rescue trial, and it looks like the prosecution's main argument to prove Wayne is guilty is to ask each witness if they're vegan. Wayne finished his testimony, and we heard from Paul Darwin Picklesheimer, who documented conditions at both actions in this case.
Just got done testifying in court, and I think it went well. I was surprised to be asked so many questions about my diet and these protests unrelated to the actual charges, but I enjoyed having a chance to talk about what I actually saw on the farm.
I was a witness today at this trial. I basically was trying to draw parallels between being a firefighter and rescuing back then as a firefighter and rescuing as an animal person today.
Today I testified in the Sonoma rescue trial, and I told the jury about the diseased ducks I witnessed and how we saw dumpsters filled with dead ducks.
Just a few more witnesses to go.
So that was a couple of days ago, obviously, but to Simone's point, they're making a big deal to ask if those who are testifying are vegan. I don't know. Who wants to take it? Go ahead, Carla.
I just had a few things. First, beautifully said, Simone. And you could tell in the closing when the prosecution did their closing statement, they went really out of their way to make sure and say that they had respect for us, that they certainly were not trying to disparage us as vegans or animal rights activists when they were asking those questions about how we care so much for the animals, about Rose's Law and DXC's mission and values. They wanted to make sure that they were saying that those questions were not asked in any way to disparage anybody. So I think they knew that they blew it by constantly asking those questions. I did have a little factoid for my math friends out there to show you how complicated this all is. There are 4 charges: 2 trespass, 2 conspiracy to trespass. There are 3 outcomes that could happen: guilty, not guilty, or a hung jury on any of those 4 counts. So there are actually 81 combinations of results for this trial.
Wow. The most interesting anecdote today, except for when the prosecutor was questioning Zoe Rosenberg, the young woman you saw in that video, and he made fun of her because she started a sanctuary when she was a kid, and it's she gave herself the name Zoe Rooster. What a cute thing for a kid to do. But Donny Moss, the prosecution, ridiculed her for that.
And must be kicking himself for doing it in the same way that the prosecutor in the closing arguments of the pig case in Utah was kicking himself. Or no, it was the Foster Farms trial. It was a Foster Farms trial where the prosecutor compared a live animal to a dented can on a shelf. I mean, I have no doubt that the prosecutor is kicking himself over the mistakes he has made arguing this case. I just want to make an observation about the video that you played with the witnesses who testified on the second to last or last day. One of them was Alexandra Paul, who is a firefighter. And when she was testifying, she said that when she's a firefighter, she's often called into people's homes to do a wellness check. And then in her mind, she learned of cruelty that was taking place inside of these animal factories and was there to do a wellness check. And when you put it like that, when you frame it that way, it makes perfect sense. Of course, people need to be doing wellness checks inside of these factories where you have tens of thousands of animals cramped into a small space without a veterinarian on site to provide care for those individuals who are sick, and many of them are. So I really, that wellness check really struck a chord with me, and I'm hoping it did with the jurors too.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it was in Utah that the prosecutor basically, it's now going into the sort of history books as don't say this when you're trying to prosecute an animal activist. Here is exactly what he said, and what the jurors afterwards said really turned them off.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Hsiung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine you're at DQ, you see a dripping ice cream cone up there that the clerk just put on the counter. Oh dear, that cone is dripping off the side. I better take it so that it doesn't make a mess on the floor.
So Curtis, you were there during that case. You had some very, very I would call them sensational impacts on that case. Why was that such a horrible mistake? I mean, it's pretty obvious to us.
Because the jury had spent the whole part of 2 weeks in there hearing about conditions of these animals and also seeing the conditions of some of the animals, at least. And it was very limited amount of animal cruelty evidence that was allowed. And they were calling the piglets by name up until that point. Lily and Lizzie, both the defense and the prosecution and the judge was calling them Lily and Lizzie up until that point. And then the prosecutor wants to say that they're cans or compare them to cans. And I want to push back on, I don't know whoever said it, someone, I think maybe it was Nathan that said the defense is kicking themselves for saying something like that. I don't think that guy learned his lesson. I do not think that Vaughn Christensen, if he had to do it again, would probably make the same ridiculous comparison because a few months later, he testified at a committee hearing for a bill in Utah, the Agriculture Committee. That a bill got passed in Utah that basically would not make it possible to use the same defense that Wayne did in Utah again. They said the law basically says it's not a defense to steal or take livestock if the livestock was sick, injured, or otherwise. And they tried to, say that this wasn't the only reason, whatever. But Von Christensen actually came and testified on behalf of the legislator. I can't remember his name, the Utah legislator that introduced this bill. And we got a bunch of people to call in and watch it. And he made the same comparison. I think it was a wedding ring the second time around to the ag committee, the committee on agriculture. Somebody else came up and testified that would be like, oh, what if my four-wheeler was not working correctly? So, some of these people are just so indoctrinated, so ingrained into this speciesist narrative. You can't help but laugh at it, honestly. It is absurd.
I just want to say, while we're waiting, this extraordinary, they were supposed to be well into deliberations right now. The closing arguments were scheduled for this morning, and this is almost unheard of. I mean, this is exceeding most murder trials that I've covered in terms of closing arguments, the length of time. But while we're on the subject of the Utah case, it is considered, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons why Wayne won is that there was a change of venue, because they went from a company town where the pig factory was basically the main employer and moved to another county as a result of Curtis Vollmer, the man you've just been listening to here with the cap, because he had a interaction with law enforcement in the company town that has now gone into the history books. It's gone viral. And any excuse that I can to play it, I do, because it is so brilliant. But it really shows, just like there's prejudice against vegans and against activists by the law enforcement in Sonoma County, as evidenced by the fact that he said, we're on your side to the farmers in quotes. Check this out. This was in, I believe, Beaver County, Utah, where the trial was originally supposed to be held, which is a company town for the pig factory, or was.
You have to have a permit.
Permit for a sidewalk?
Let me get my camera on too.
Sure.
Okay. You're not to
This is not a good look.
You're not to be spreading.
This is not a good look.
You're not supposed to be down here.
This is public property.
You're not to be down here doing this. Do you realize that your company caused a problem in our community?
Do you have anything relevant to say to me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've asked you to stop.
Okay, I'm on public property.
You need to stop.
Okay.
Go ahead. You need to stop. You realize you're not wanted in this community and you've been asked to leave?
I don't care.
I know you don't care. That's the problem with your group. You just don't care about people or anybody. Do you understand? You've been asked to leave.
All of this for handing out some flyers. This is how much commotion.
All of this because your group has been a direct influence on shutting down Smithfield Foods. You don't realize that's the major employer in our county?
Right. So that one went viral. We've got breaking news to bring you now.
People out of the courtroom.
Oh, yeah. Take it away, Carla Cabral. What's happening at court?
Hey, we've got news.
The prosecution just had the final word in the case, and the jury is going to right now decide their schedule for tomorrow, and they'll be deliberating tomorrow. So we will not have a verdict today, but we might have a verdict tomorrow.
So Zoe Rosenberg, you're one of the witnesses. I've never seen a rebuttal go that long. Like Wayne had a long summary of closing argument, and then that ended. I don't know. It seems like hours ago. What happened? Tell us about the rebuttal case by the prosecution.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was almost verbatim the exact same thing that Prosecutor Wayner said this morning. The other prosecutor said as the final word, almost verbatim, made nearly the exact same points, except she added in some really weird points, like if Wayne hadn't been at Reichardt, who would have spoken to law enforcement? who would have provided people food? And I'm like, so many people could have done that. It's really like, we don't rely that heavily on Wayne. But it was just kind of a silly point.
What, can I ask you
yeah.
what the jury's like? Did you get a sense like that the jury might be irritated to hear the same thing twice or not?
They didn't seem irritated, but they've been very hard to read. They're not a very expressive jury, so it's hard to say. But, you know, people say that they feel like the jury was more engaged during Wayne's closing than the prosecution, so hopefully they're feeling more moved by him. I mean, a lot of the evidence that or the arguments that the prosecution is making, it really just feels like they hate animals. And like, you know, like they showed the Rose's Law Animal Bill of Rights, all of the, you know, the rights in the rebuttal, and, you know, tried to make the point that these are like some horrible thing. And it's like the right not to be abused by humans. Like the average person doesn't think that's some evil thing to believe in. So I feel like I'm hoping the jury just sees the prosecution as these people who like hate animals and want to protect their abusers. But we'll see.
Let me ask you, the prosecutor who came back in the rebuttal case and repeated the same things, that was a female, correct?
Yes.
Do you think, I'm wondering if they think that might be like a softer approach, Michelle Celestino, like, oh, a woman's touch, you know, I mean, in that mindset.
I think they're using every they can right now because they're desperate to get jury sympathy. Wayne has demonstrated a beautiful case that's heartfelt and factually correct and all of that. And I just think the prosecution is at this point trying to do anything in their power to sway the jury to not believe the truth. So I hope that they don't fall into that and they're actually bored from another summation from the prosecution, and that they realize that what they need to do is acquit Wayne.
I don't even understand what's going on with, oh, they're going to decide what their schedule is and come back. You know, my understanding is when a jury gets a case, they get a case. They can decide they're going to eat through lunch. They can decide they're going to go out to lunch, but it's their case. Can't we say verdict watch now, technically, Nathan?
We can say it when the jury is told they can go and deliberate, and then we'll be right.
Well,
until
but
then,
I don't understand. And maybe Carla, you can clarify this. Oh, there's Priya, who was originally a defendant and she is no longer a part of the case. It's just Wayne. But I don't understand. You know, call me crazy. In all the cases I've ever covered, when both sides finish their closing arguments and the judge and the jury has their instructions from the judge, that's it. They get the case. Why is there some kind of legal limbo right now? This is cuckoo.
I think you're asking me why they got the last say. And I'm not sure. I didn't understand that either, but it seemed like the last say did go to the prosecution. And I just want to say,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's their burden. It's the prosecution's burden to do this. That's why they get the last say.
Oh,
it's sort of
no,
like
I understand that. But why isn't the case given to the jury? Like, why can't we say verdict watch? I mean, the jury gets the case. They can decide whether they want to, you know, do whatever, play cards but it's their.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure why the judge told them to come back tomorrow. Besides the fact that they only have 30 minutes to deliberate, so she just said, "Okay, come back tomorrow." But you're right. I was thinking the same thing. I just want to say, after listening to the prosecution closing statement and Wayne's closing statement, there was like this sense of, oh, all of us should applaud, and I think the jury wanted to do that too. That's the sense I got. That's what I felt, because it was so moving. And I was just telling Wayne, I was like, Wayne, whatever the prosecution said and didn't say, whatever facts that they might have gotten right, whatever ways that they could have inspired the jury, the one thing that they could never inspire the jury on is the fact that they care about the most vulnerable beings on this planet. And that's what you have. And that's what we have. And that's why we're all in the courtroom. So you could feel that. You could feel that. And I hope that the jury takes note of that.
So what you're saying is, Priya, you're saying that it goes beyond law. It goes beyond the technical of this statute or that statute, that there was something moving in Wayne's quest that goes beyond mere sort of earthly concerns.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the first things, I heard from many lawyers, that I was not aware of, ironically, even though you hear the judge saying, remember, the facts are all that matters. The evidence is all that matters. That's a joke. We know that people, my lawyers literally told me, they're like, we all know, after doing, cases for multiple years, being lawyers for multiple years, that the jury goes with who they like, who inspires them. And that gives me a lot of hope, because I'm like, this prosecution is not inspiring. And all the jury has to do is ask themselves one question, one word question. And that question is why? Why would Wayne go from being a lawyer who makes such good money to literally sleeping on the floor of a San Francisco apartment and give up all these things that he could have had? He could have had a really amazing house by now that's probably $1 million. He could have had an incredible salary. Why would he give that up? Why would we all give up our days, not go to work? Why are we all here? Why do these people take this risk to go inside? Why? That's all they have to ask. Why? And I think that they already have the answer to that.
Oh, wow. And that's so beautifully said. I personally have an opinion about why we are not saying verdict watch, because I think they want to keep Wayne gagged until tomorrow. Is he still gagged? Because I bet you that's the strategy. Let's just hold it to tomorrow. So they haven't started deliberating. So Wayne can't come out here and talk. Or maybe he can. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not sure if the answer to that question is definitively yes or no, but I don't think Wayne is gagged at this point.
Okay.
I think that,
Yeah, I think it's lifted now once the statements are done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Wayne can, but yeah, we'll hear from Wayne, because he might have heard something more specific from the judge, but I don't think that Wayne is any longer gagged.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we really hope everybody hang in there and he can come out and say a few things to us. That would be absolutely incredible. I want to add, go back to Simone Reyes. Simone, you have sort of a big picture look at this as an animal rescuer. What Priya just said is so obvious, and I can't believe that we didn't think of it. It was brilliant. Likability is huge, huge. Likability.
Yes, likability is huge. Facts are sometimes not even as important as just being liked, right? Again, I go back to my point, we're all human. I've seen Wayne personally, as we all have, doing media, and when they allowed cameras in, Wayne is very likable, I think, because he approaches things in sort of a very educated, a very eloquent manner, but he doesn't seem angry, and so he actually seems very likable. And I think that's really important for the jury to see that, because, inside of every activist, there's so many different emotions that can come forward. And we were just hearing, Wayne doesn't have to be doing this, right? He's got a lot of things that he could be doing with his life, but instead he dedicates it to this. And, even if somebody doesn't agree, with who we are and what we stand for, you would hope that they would at least be able to see the righteousness in it, the respect in it of somebody who is willing to sacrifice their freedom, for a cause. And so innately, I would hope that makes him very likable. But again, the mirror effect comes into play, and we just don't know.
Donny Moss, I have to ask you this. that was video of Wayne in a previous trial that allowed cameras. There's no cameras here, no still photos, and no sketches allowed except one of Wayne, which is crazy given that this is America. But what about that point that's being made, the subliminal point that everybody there has to know that this man is risking prison for a moral issue? They obviously know he wasn't involved in the situation. In fact, he never did take any animals, but he wasn't involved in the situation for personal gain. That has to be obvious, even to the most clueless person. So doesn't that have to give him some props for like, wow, it's impressive. Somebody's willing to go to prison for 2 years to save animals, to speak for animals.
Yeah, not only the sacrifice that people must recognize that he's made and is making, but also his diplomacy. Those jurors saw his interactions with law enforcement on the egg-laying hen farm, and we all watched that on this live stream. He is so diplomatic, and his love-based approach is so disarming that it's really, and he's so articulate and he speaks so beautifully and simply and elegantly, as I think someone else pointed out, maybe Simone, that it's hard not to be captivated by him. It really is. He's intoxicating. I was thinking while we were in our live stream that I wished I was in the courtroom listening to him, because what he said, it's like when he speaks, it's like music to the ears. And I can't help but think that the jury will be sort of as intoxicated by him as many of us are.
And somebody said, will we see you here tomorrow? Yes, we'll be on verdict watch. The second a verdict comes in, and we'll get that word from Carla, who is there, we will immediately schedule our live broadcast, which in truth takes about 15, 20 minutes to schedule. I have to set it up on the streaming network and set it up on StreamYard. And then Michelle Celestino, our social media director, has to spread it out over a whole bunch of other Facebook pages, including the DXC Facebook page and Vegan FTA and many others. So Renee King-Sonnen's Rowdy Girl pages, National Animal Rights Day pages that have agreed to cross-stream this because it's so important. So all of that takes us about 20 minutes. But you know what? It takes about 20 minutes for people to get into the courtroom. So the second we hear a verdict, we're going to do that process, and we are going to bring you the coverage of this verdict, which I would think very likely would happen tomorrow, but you never know. Okay. We'll be on standby for the entire thing, and we'll bring as many of these incredible panelists back with us, including the one and only Carla Cabral. And if Curtis Vollmer is not collecting signatures, or maybe even if he is, he might be willing to join us. Curtis, as we wait for possibly Wayne to come out, which would really be amazing, can you tell us how it's going and what you're collecting signatures for, which is really, really another huge part of this story?
Yeah, perfect timing. I'm actually walking to my car right now. I'm going to head over to Trader Joe's about 10 minutes away, where I've collected quite a few signatures. It's one of my favorite spots. But yeah, while we did not plan it to work out the way that it did, but almost literally the day after or the day before the trial started, we got the okay to start collecting signatures for this ballot initiative that's happening in Sonoma County to ban CAFOs, CAFO, that's the EPA's acronym for concentrated animal feeding operations, which colloquially we all know are factory farms. So this ballot initiative, if passed, would give the county 3 years to get rid of these factory farms from Sonoma County, and signature gathering efforts have far exceeded expectations. In just 7 weeks now, we've collected 17,000 signatures. We just crossed the 17K threshold yesterday, and we need to get to about 30,000 to ensure that we will be on the November 2024 ballot, and we have until March. So we've gathered over half of the signatures that we need in just 7 weeks, and kind of the timeline now is to get these signatures collected by the end of the year. And just today, I'm pretty sure every day that court's been going on, there's been a lot of just people walking by noticing like all of the signs and all of the people gathered and like people having coffee and drinks and just kind of interacting with one another and wondering like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's going on out here? So we've been having these outreach conversations with people walking by. And then we're also like, oh, do you vote in the county? Oh, you might want to sign this petition too to ban these facilities that these activists are being charged with rescuing animals from. So the public reception has been phenomenal, gone way better than I thought. And if you want more information or you want to see the bill text, you can go to endfactoryfarming.vote. There's also footage both inside and outside of a lot of these facilities here in Sonoma County, including the Sunrise Egg Farm and the Reichardt Duck Farm that are at the center of this case.
Well, good luck with that, Curtis Vollmer. And you are really a man of many, many talents. And we want to, the fact, this is what's so amazing about this, Lindsey Baker. If that wins, the very facilities, and we invite the owners of all the facilities in this case, Reichardt and Sunrise, as well as anybody from the animal agriculture industry, you are invited on anytime. We would love to hear your side. We would love to dialogue with you. But if that ballot measure is approved by the voters, it would phase out the very animal factories that are at the heart of this case.
What were you saying?
Irony.
No,
I think it's really interesting that more than likely we know people do not want these facilities near their homes. We know how horrific they are. And if this gets passed and they have to phase out in 3 years, it's going to have a snowball effect. And we're putting the squeeze on factory farming. We're forcing them to transition to a better system, plant-powered system of feeding, because we still need them to feed us. We're not against them. We want to work with them to change. And I think in this case, we're going to win no matter what happens. I pray for Wayne. I don't want to be cavalier because it's not my freedom that's at risk. But I pray for Wayne. I have very optimistic feelings about it. And I'll be here tomorrow. I'm assuming these are.
Of course. We would love you to be here tomorrow. So I think we're going to get final thoughts as we wait for Wayne to possibly come out, because certainly we want to hear from him. I mean, he's facing 2 years in prison, and the least we can do is wait around to hear from him. I know it's been a long day, but frankly, I think I feel proud of Unchained TV and the entire team we have here for being the only news media that is covering this live, certainly, but it appears the only news media organization at court today, which I think is shameful, and I'm embarrassed to have been a mainstream journalist for so many years. Please download Unchained TV. We're the only vegan streaming network you can download on your phone. You can watch online and sign up, and on your TVs, Samsung, Amazon Fire Stick, Roku, and Apple TV device. So let's get final thoughts, starting with Nathan Semmel, the attorney on hand, who has done an incredible job here of explaining things.
Thanks, Jane. I keep thinking, I try to tie what Wayne is going through with some of the experiences of my own clients and clients who I visit in jails and prisons. We can't ever be desensitized. I think sometimes we can be a little desensitized, even us, about the suffering of animals. And when we see animals, because we've been exposed to it so much, that it doesn't quite affect us maybe the same way as it once did in the beginning. I think we can never lose sight also of just how risky the activism is, these actions are for all of these people, particularly Wayne, who, is the last person standing here in this case. Prison is a horrible place. It's awful. And when we throw around numbers like, 1 and 2 years and 10 years, and we talk about 1 or 2 as, well, that's not so terrible compared to like 10 years. 15 minutes in prison is horrible. 2 years it's unimaginable to me. It's everything you can imagine it to be. It removes your dignity. It is impossible to live and be vegan in prison because it's generally vegan meals aren't provided, you're just stripped of your entire identity. And we can never lose sight of that. These people are really putting their lives on the line for the greater cause here. And, we owe it to them to get involved, to watch you, Jane. Thank you so much for what you do. One of these days, mainstream media will really catch on. I'm heartened by sometimes we see some major outlets like the New York Times pick up the articles after the acquittals. Hopefully that happens here and it gains some traction. But, we just have to all keep doing our part.
Yes, and I want to say I'm very happy to have learned from Curtis that National Public Radio was in court today. That's great. And let's hope that this was one of the articles the New York Times put out after another one of the acquittals. Rescuing farmed animals from cruelty should be legal. I believe that was an opinion piece. In any case, yes, like I said, direct action everywhere. And Wayne Hsiung, even though he's no longer with it, was a co-founder, gets more write-ups than anybody else. It's sad that you have to go to prison, or risk going to prison, I should say, to get write-ups. So I could show you a lot of the articles that have been written about direct action everywhere and Wayne Hsiung in particular. But it still should be more reporters at this courthouse. Where's CNN? Where's NBC? Where's CBS? Where's ABC? Where's Fox News? I mean, we need to get this information out there. And so, yes, I certainly hope, Nathan, that you're right, that the New York Times and NPR and all these news outlets will get the verdict and report it. We want that to happen. Obviously, that's the most important thing. So let me go to Simone for your final thought. And again, we are waiting to see if Wayne Hsiung will come out. We've got probably a couple of minutes. Court closes at 4:40, I think. So he should be, when he comes out, just let us know. We'll jump right to him. Simone, your final thought.
Well, the prayer, of course, is to never, ever have prison time for any of our activists. However, I am on the board of social compassion and legislation, and we did pass some legislation that vegan meals are to be offered, at least in California, in prisons and healthcare facilities and hospitals, which is good just for every reason, right? Just for the health of everyone and the animals. But my final thought on this, obviously, is that, thank goodness for Unchained TV, because it is the most important thing that these cases be spread far and wide so that people truly do understand what is happening, not just to animals behind closed doors, but also to the activists and to the rescuers and to the people that give their whole lives to this. There's animal rights as a social justice movement. Pretty much every other social justice movement gets real-time media, whether it's, women's rights, Black Lives Matter, whatever it is. And unfortunately, animal rights has always taken a backseat to that. And it has so much to do with, I think, advertisers and just shaking up what we have the potential to shake up if people truly hear us and they truly understand. Because if everybody watched one trial, or if everybody was able to see what we know and what we see, we have to believe that a majority of people would go vegan. And imagine the shakeup of that. And there's a lot of people who are very much afraid of that. We hold a lot of power, and the media holds a lot of power. So I think it's fantastic that Unchained TV is always, there to show this, and that we have the power of social media, that we can spread it wide. And I think that because of social media, on some levels, we're going to get to the point where we won't even need the national media, because certainly the younger generations are getting their news differently than when we grew up. And so, Unchained TV is just, forging the way, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And yes, streaming has now overtaken broadcasting cable as the #1 way people are watching television, which is why we started our streaming network, and it's still in its infancy. already 85% of Americans are watching most of their TV content streaming now. Yes, sure, it's mostly Netflix and Amazon Prime. However, we're in the infancy of people having this power to download the content they want to get the information that they really crave. So let's go to Michelle Celestino. Your final thought.
Well, I was thinking that, you know, I'm new to animal rights movement and making that connection. And this is why it's so important. These trials, as Simone was saying, and Donny and Nathan and Lindsey and Ellen and Carla and you, these trials and everything going on in the movement need to be heard. People need to know what's going on. And I think you were just saying NPR was there. And I'm thinking like maybe this is amazing. It's gonna, hopefully they do something on it. And then one of the major networks picks it up. And then this message of what's going on, because if they knew how their animals, their meat was processed and what was going on, and not even just the dying animals, but the conditions and how that is affecting, they're not making the connection. And I think that's why it's so important that a trial like this, and unfortunately Wayne and other activists have to put their lives on the line, but they don't know this is happening. They think this is an anomaly, you know, and that is why there is so much power, as Simone was saying, in this movement and what it's saying. And I'm really grateful to have made that connection. And I'm hoping that with Unchained TV, and as we further cover these things, that other people will make that connection too. Just my friends alone who are not vegan, they're astounded by what's going on. And hopefully that will make people look into what really is happening and what's going on behind closed doors.
Well said. Donny Moss, your final thought.
Yes. So when one or more of the defense witnesses was talking about how they encountered ducks lying on their backs, stuck, unable to turn themselves over, you know, it reminded me of a talk that was given by the founder of United Poultry Concerns, Karen Davis. That's a national advocacy group that advocates on behalf of chickens and ducks and turkeys and other birds. And she said that these animals inside of these animal factories in these cages intensively cramped together, they don't even understand why they're there. They're confused. And it just, seeing the ducks on their backs, it was a reminder of how critical it is for the world to see the footage that organizations like DXE take inside of these factories that are well hidden from public view, behind closed doors, behind, you know, high gates. The world needs to, you know, we need to shine a spotlight on these facilities to get these animals out of there, because they are in big trouble, and it's up to us to help them.
You are so right, Donny. If not us, who? Right? And the only thing that is required for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. That is a famous saying. I forget who said it, but look at these images. And again, we invite the owners of these animal factories on any time. But, you know, there's just this basic concept of innocent beings suffering, and to prosecute those who are trying to save innocent beings who are suffering. What have we become as a human species? That's what I'd like to know. What have we degenerated into as a human species? Factory farming, animal factories have not been around for very long. Okay. Even industrialization hasn't been around for very long. But the idea of taking industrialization and putting animals, sentient beings, in that industrialized process, that is a very new concept. In the blink of history, it is a blink. And so it's up to us to stop it, because it has just become the norm. These giant concentrated animal feeding operations did not exist in the 1940s. I remember when and you may remember it too. I'm a little bit older probably than everybody. The first McDonald's that I saw. Okay. And my parents were pretty much pescatarians. We went in on a trip once. We tried the French fries and we left and we never went back. So it's not that common. It's not that normal. It's not tradition. It's not tradition. The idea that this is all an attack on tradition. No, this is an attack on something that is very, very new and that we all need to be hyper vigilant about. Animal factories. Factories were not designed for animals. They were designed for things. And it's basically gotten out of control. So, Lindsey Baker, I guess that's my final thought. What's your final thought?
I just have to agree with you that the industrialization of farming, the dehumanization, I mean, as a vegan, I feel like we haven't, and I know everyone else here, of course, and everyone listening, I feel we have another choice. Why not make that choice? And it's a great choice, by the way. But the fact that what it's degenerated to is just incredible. And what is the next step? Who will it affect next? We already see what's happening in many places of the world with the wars that are going on. Again, desensitization, dehumanization, it's the same process. We, like Jane, you have said so many times and quoted others as saying, we are all being factory farmed here. And if we don't speak up and if we don't continue this effort until this whole thing changes, we are all going to be in big, big trouble for many reasons.
Wow, what a great closing statement. All right, well, let's get, I think we've got everybody but the two who are on scene. So we're going to go to Curtis. He looks like he's sick of us, but we are not sick of him. We love Curtis.
Right.
What's your final thought? What's the big picture as we hope that Wayne comes out?
No, come on, Jane. You're putting words in my mouth, telling me I'm sick of y'all. Come on. That's not nice.
I'm teasing.
That's not nice. I know. I'm playing with you.
I like to tease
you. Yeah, I've been just thinking about this case and just how weak the prosecution has gotten. In some of the pretrial hearings that have been happening, seems like over the last 2 years, Bob Weiner seemed like a formidable opponent, and people were kind of worried, like, oh, this guy is probably the best lawyer that everyone's come up against so far. And as time has gone on, as this trial has dragged on, from the little I've seen both in the courtroom and been reading online, his main case now is trying to paint them out as crazy vegans and bringing up vegan this, vegan that, which is a new tactic. We hadn't seen that in Merced or in Utah or North Carolina. Bringing up Matt Johnson and Zoe's antics, we'll call them, which by the way happened years after any of these cases at hand. Wayne could have objected, but he's not. We're going to take the high road, let them ask any questions they want, and we're going to answer them. But the fact that they're trying to bring up this stuff that's completely unrelated to the charges at hand just shows you how desperate they are, how they are in extreme desperation mode to try to paint not only Wayne, but the entire organization as some sort of crazy fringe group, is just laughable. And they're trying to say that Wayne is culpable and guilty for the Reichert action because he's handing out food to the activists. Oh my God, who's going to hand out food if Wayne's not there? Oh my goodness, guilty. Throw him in jail for handing out some biscuits and water to people that are locked down. Geez, that's the crime of the century here, folks. Giving out some biscuits to people that are peacefully demonstrating. It's just laughable. It's absurd, and just like the other trials, the common thread here is that up front, the judge and the prosecutors and the quote unquote system try their best to keep animal cruelty, mentions of animal cruelty, the evidence out of the case and try to make it just focus narrowly on the charges, trespass, whatever it may be, theft. And we've seen time and time again now that it's impossible to keep that stuff out. It is impossible to make this purely about the theft of an object or the rescue of an object. It's not dented cans. It's not wedding rings that we're talking about here. It's animals. And I think that's going to be the common theme moving forward to any further rescue trials that may happen.
Well said. And what you're looking at is one photo that the jury was allowed to see. And then they got a tight shot, and it shows actually a mummified bird inside one of these facilities. The doctor who testified said, I found a hen that had essentially dried out, almost mummified. She was stiff as a board and had been there for a long time. I mean, that kind of says everything right there. My gosh, if you went into a sanctuary and you saw an animal that was as stiff as a board that had been just left there for dead, you know, that would be a super, super huge problem. So it's very interesting. So everybody's given their final thoughts. Carla, you haven't, but I was hoping that maybe Wayne would come out. What's the latest on that? Do you think that it's something realistic that we should wait for?
I have to be very careful. The jury is actually coming out right now, right in front of us.
Okay.
Members of the jury are walking out. So I would actually suspect that Wayne will be coming out very shortly after. I was told that there was a lot of just procedural things that they were talking about after summations were finished. So more jury members are coming out right now. So
I don't want you to get in trouble.
No, it's fine. I won't.
Okay.
Yeah, I suspect Wayne will be on his way very shortly.
Yes. Well, I just feel like it's so important to hear from him. I mean, obviously, his life is at stake, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that his life is at stake. Prisons are dangerous places, and 2 years in prison is a very, very significant thing. As a journalist, I've gone into prisons to cover stories, and I can tell you that it left me like traumatized just to spend an hour inside a prison, much less go to prison for 2 years. So again, I want to go back to, and anybody who feels they have to go, please go. I'm just not, I don't want to, completely mess up your lives. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
I'm going to take off. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for covering the trial. Thanks, everybody. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. I'll send you the link. So hopefully you can join us. Thank you for everything, Curtis, and way to go. As we wait for Wayne to come out, hopefully, and talk to us about this whole case and the enormity of it. Wow. Tomorrow the jury's going to come in. What are they going to come in at 10 o'clock?
I don't know yet any of the thing, but I do want to share with you guys when the jury, they all came through already, but I just want to share when the jury came out, this is what they're seeing. They're seeing this giant group of activists all around. So they're seeing how much we care, how many of us are out here for such a small case. They get to see so many incredible people here, and I can't help but feel like that has meaning to them. And when they walked past, several of them were making eye contact with us. In the very beginning of this, when the jurors would walk by, they would avert their eyes. They kept going straight ahead. And I've been seeing more and more. And right now, when they came out, they're making much more eye contact with us. And again, I have to give that some kind of meaning.
Absolutely. And it gets back to when the Smithfield trial was going on, the pig trial. At first, everybody seemed very shut down. And by the end of the trial, even the judge was saying the pigs by their names, Donny Moss. I think it was Lizzie is one of them, and I forget the other one. But
Lily and Lizzie.
Lily and Lizzie and these two pigs that had just been like widgets at the start of the case, by the very end of the case, humans will be human, even when they're trying to not be human.
Yeah, it is interesting that the prosecutor in that case didn't go out of his way to not use their names, because as long as he keeps presenting them as things, then that increases the likelihood that the jurors will see them as things. So I thought that was really an interesting development. I think one of the things that works in favor of the witnesses of the defense here is that each of the witnesses has been very forthcoming and open and honest and transparent and proud of what they did. And I think that's also, I spoke about Wayne's presentation as being disarming. I think that's also must be disarming to the jurors to see the transparency and the pride that the witnesses have in their role in these open rescues. And also these witnesses make a compelling case for the fact that these animals are actually individuals, they're sentient beings. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful development, because if nothing else, each of these jurors is going to go home with perhaps a new mindset. And who knows if they'll change their behavior and influence others in their lives to change their behavior. That's one of the benefits of provoking these prosecutions.
Well, didn't when the pig trial was over in Utah and Wayne and Paul Picklesheimer were acquitted, DXE, Direct Action Everywhere, did interviews with the jurors and asked them for their feedback. Can you summarize that feedback, Carla?
Yeah, so we always make an attempt to connect with the jurors afterwards, and the jurors that agreed to speak with us spoke very highly of the actions that we took. One even wanted to join and help from now on. Several spoke out at talks. One went to a council member meeting. So the same meeting where Curtis was talking about how another Von Christensen was there and spoke about animals like they were wedding rings, and somebody called in and equated that theft to what if something was wrong with their 4x4. One of the jurors also called in and said that they were a juror in the case and that they felt that what the activists did was right. So I know that once this is over, we will also be attempting to reach out to the jurors to see if any of them are going to be willing to tell us about their thought process. And, who knows what's going to happen, but we're going to at least attempt to reach out, and hopefully a few of them will give us their thoughts on what happened behind the doors.
In a way, it's kind of like what's happening to this jury is what we want to happen to the whole world: education. And how do you get educated? Not just by a 15-second video, but you get educated over time. And so that's part of it. Nathan.
Yeah, conversation is key. And, as an attorney, you never advise anybody to represent themselves, right? I mean, it comes with a host of risks and just perils. But Wayne is unique, and he's proven that. And the reason is because he is able to talk to people and not judge them, not act superior to them, because I don't think he feels he's superior to anybody. I think he is able to engage them in a conversation, and they are able to see that, it's coming from the heart, it's coming from his mind, and I think people relate to it. I think people want to be better, and so when you see these jurors given that opportunity, and then afterwards start to say the same things that we say, I mean, that's really a shot in the arm. And when you have an opportunity to talk to jurors, you learn from your mistakes, you learn from what you did right, what you did wrong, and you take it on, you take it to the next trial, and you use it to keep on to keep on having these types of successes.
Can't hear you, Jane.
In a way, the jurors have become invested in animal rights because they've spent now how many weeks studying this, listening to it. I mean, they say 37% of people go vegan by watching a documentary like the kind we have on Unchained TV, Earthlings, Dominion, Vegucated, Forks Over Knives. This is like being in a course, frankly. So even though the prosecution might want to drag this trial out, the longer they drag it out, ironically, the more the jurors might become invested in the issues. You're nodding your head, Simone. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that is the hope, right? That is the plan, and I think that it's funny. I've gone to see Ingrid Newkirk speak many times, and she always, you sort of think she's going to talk in very broad terms because, obviously we want the entire world to be abolitionists and we want the entire world to believe in animal liberation, but she doesn't. She actually tells very, very, very specific and very emotional stories about very specific animals, whether it's the bird that she would see over and over again outside of her window at her office and how hard it was for this bird to survive during the storms and the snowstorms and trying to keep her babies warm and all of this, or the, one of my favorite stories, which was, the tank with these two poor fish in it, and one fish became disabled, and how every day when the person would go to put the flakes of food on top, that the fish that was able to swim easily would go underneath the other fish and lift him up to the, to the food. These sort of stories. And that's what we're seeing in these trials, right? We're talking about very specific rescues, even though we hope that the message is broad, right? Like there's nothing special about the animals that are rescued from laboratories or from slaughterhouse floors or anything in terms of that they are different from all of the other ones, right? They all have the ability to suffer in exactly the same way. They're very special to us because we see them as individuals. But in order for people, I think, to really change their thinking, I think they have to know about each animal as an individual. And I think that's sort of the ticket. And I think Ingrid is onto something because those are the stories that she tells. So the more that we can talk about these animals as individuals, I think that's going to be sort of the win. And I think that's how people are going to change their minds about animals as a whole.
I think it's a very good point. Things are heating up outside the courthouse. You see a lot of people there. Let's go back to Carla. Go take it away, Carla.
Yeah, so Wayne just came out, but unfortunately, he said that the gag order is still in place all the way until there's a verdict. So I can't put him on. I did have a question. I had a question for Nathan because the reason apparently that it took this long for Wayne to even come out here was that both sides were deciding with the judge what exhibits they were going to make available to the jury. And that doesn't make sense to me. I would have thought any exhibit that was presented during the case would be available to the jury. So explain that one.
I'm not sure how to explain it other than if it's in evidence, the jury's entitled to it. I mean, I suppose they could be required to ask for it before it's given to them. The parties can agree to just give them everything now or agree on pieces of evidence to give them without them asking. But I think maybe I can only speculate that they can't seem to agree on every piece of evidence that the jury should see. So if you have a piece of evidence that say is favorable to Wayne and not so favorable to the prosecution might not be so keen on just giving it to the jury until they ask for it. So maybe there's some of that sort of, litigating going on right now, but I'm really not sure.
Nathan, why is it that Wayne can't speak. The jury has the case now. That seems also unfair that he can't speak. It seems like it's designed to stifle media coverage.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been unfair all along. I've never seen a case. I mean, this case has received, like we've said, basically no mainstream media attention. I don't understand what the great risk is here. Now, granted, everybody should be watching your programs, but if they're not, and even if they are, jurors are given instructions every day by the judge. And the judge has to instruct the jury, you are not to read or watch anything about this trial. Happens every day in every trial and everywhere across the country. I don't know why this would be any different. You tell the jurors they cannot read any accounts of this case. They can't watch any TV. And then Wayne should be able to speak freely, as is his First Amendment right to do so. I think if a challenge to this judge was brought during this case on that gag order, I think it probably would have been reversed, or it would have been, tailored in a less restrictive fashion. I have never seen a complete gag order. As an aside, there's a really big case going on in the country right now, right, related to a former president, where even in those cases, there is so much litigation over even the smallest of gag orders. And he's allowed to go on and, say what he says on social media and most television shows with no repercussions. On this case, a case involving the alleged conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor, there is a full gag order in place even after closing arguments. It is a really poor exercise of discretion by this judge, and I think an unconstitutional one.
And let's remember, not only no video and no still cameras, but this sketch artist, you can see how unhappy she looks. First, the judge ripped a sketch out of her hands that she was doing of the judge, and then issued this order that you can sketch, but you can't sketch the prosecutors, the witnesses, the judge, the court staff, the jurors, the bailiffs, or the observers in the gallery. So the only sketch she is allowed to do is that of defendant Wayne Hsiung, period. I mean, it's crazy. And I think it's crazy that the gag order remains. And let me tell you, as somebody who was in news for many years, it makes it harder to cover the trial. It makes it a lot harder. You're nodding your head, Michelle. If, you worked at KCAL TV, you've worked at various shows, national TV shows. If you can't interview the person at the heart of it, it's much harder to cover the story.
It's really funny because my friend who I was talking to last night, who is a reporter as well, she was asking me, she's like, so do you have cameras in the courtroom? I'm like, we don't have cameras. We don't have sketch artists. We don't have video. There's no tape recordings. They're literally handwriting all the notes onto Twitter. She's like, what? So how are you getting your information? I'm like, well, there are extensive notes. And then we're talking to some of the activists who come out, Carla, who comes out and gives us the 411 on everything going on. And she's like, this is highly unusual. She's also covered hundreds of court cases as you have. And she's like, I've never heard of something like that. Like you said, is it a mob case? Is it a murder case? Is it something like that? It's completely unfair what's going on here. And if anything, if NPR's article has anything to do with it, mentioning the animal abuse and animal cruelty, but also the whole dereliction of constitutional rights that Wayne is not afforded. Like, what is that about?
Yeah, I think somebody should do an article just about the First Amendment issues in this case. I mean, the First Amendment issues are something I have never seen before. Again, they are treating Wayne like he is some giant mafioso, organized crime leader. And it's just completely, absolutely crazy. So we're not going to hear from Wayne. Last question to you, Carla. When is the jury back? What time tomorrow?
Good question. Guys, when are we starting tomorrow morning? Wow, the jurors are here at 9 a.m. Wayne has to be here at 8 a.m. So you can see they are starting this as early. That was probably something they were discussing during all that time. I'm sure that they want to have as much time as possible to deliberate, and they don't want this to be another starting at 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock. So this is how much the jury wants to deliberate. They're getting in at 9 a.m. Incredible.
I have a feeling tomorrow night we're going to have a verdict. It seems like they want to have a long day, and it could very well be tomorrow night at 4:30 or 4:30 Pacific time, we would have a verdict. So we're going to wrap our coverage now. I want to thank everybody, our panelists, unbelievable. They're texting each other funny things. I'm going to say what Donny Moss says. He said he had to pee since closing arguments started. But
that was private, Jane.
A little levity never hurt anybody. But you guys have done, and gals, you people have done an incredible job. I thank you so much. We will reach out to all of you. Just keep your phones on alert because you're our esteemed panel. We will text you the second a verdict comes in. We're on a group text, and just know that I'll immediately start putting together the live. And hopefully by the time the jurors get in there and the judge and the two sides and the verdict is announced, we'll be live. And then we'll be able to bring it to our viewers tomorrow or whenever it happens. But it looks like it's going to be sometime tomorrow. I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who's watching and who's commenting and who's sharing on social media or watching on the streaming network. We're going to be tomorrow, Verdict Watch live. Will Wayne Hsiung go to prison for open rescue? And we will bring you all of that breaking news. And just want to also urge everybody, please take a moment, since you all are appreciative of our coverage, to download Unchained TV, the world's only vegan streaming network. You can download it on your phone for free. You can download it. You can sign up at Unchained TV, and you can also watch it on Amazon TVs, any Amazon TV, Amazon Fire Stick, or a Roku device or Apple TV device. See you tomorrow. Let's take this to its conclusion. See you next time.